Chapter 1987. Outside the three-world island, over 100 Yu-Yao gathered in one place with bewildered expressions. They had been summoned by Yuan Du. A small number of them were Yu-Yao from the first Yuan realm, but most of them were Yu-Yao guardians from the various spiritual islands. However, since they were willing to accept Yuan Du's summons, they were more or less related to him. The 100 Yu-Yao were led by Yuan Cheng. Yuan Du had brought them here to borrow their strength to break through the three-world islands' protective array. After all, as Rizhao, there was no need for him to do something as trivial as breaking the array himself. However, the blood kindred had betrayed him and He Yun had attacked. Yuan Du had no choice but to cooperate and quickly break through the three-world islands' protective array. After that, the Rizhao appeared one after another. The 100 or so Yu-Yao were completely useless. However, they didn't leave. Instead, they stayed outside the three-world island and watched. The current situation was treacherous. Ma Bin was fighting against He Yun and Mo Wenli. Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao were fighting against Mu Qing. Yuan Du was severely injured and his condition was unknown. Chen Xuanba and Gu Shi had also disappeared into the blood sea after being hit by the golden light. Yuan Cheng looked at the churning blood sea. His heart was filled with fear. He even had the urge to flee from this place. He could vaguely sense that the situation this time was too big. It had far exceeded Yuan Du's expectations. However, he was still a descendant of Yuan Du. If he fled now, there would be no place for him in the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future. Therefore, he hesitated for a moment. Then he gritted his teeth and shouted, "Friends, follow me. Kill Lu Yi and save the guardians." As soon as he finished speaking, he was the first to charge into the blood sea. Most of the 100 or so Yu-Yao hesitated for a moment before following him. A small number of them hesitated. However, given the current situation, they had no choice but to retreat. Lu Yi of the Three-Realm Island was indeed renowned. Now, he had even unleashed a blood sea secret technique of such a scale. However, he was still only Yu-Yao. He was only one person. With over 100 of them working together, how could they not be able to take him down? Moreover, there were still 3 Ricarius in the blood sea. They did not believe that these 3 Ricarius had completely lost the ability to resist. Even if they were trapped by that mysterious golden light, it would not be that easy for Yu-Yao to kill Ricarius. Perhaps Lu Yi of the Three-World Island had already been captured by one of the Ricarius. They only needed to put on an act now, and in the future, they would gain the friendship of the Ricarius protectors. More than 100 figures fell into the sea of blood one after another, like stones sinking into the sea, without the slightest splash of blood. In the blood sea, Lu Yi grabbed Chen Xuanba's body. The arrogant sunshine cultivator was now like a dried fish. His essence, qi, and spirit had been sucked dry, and his vitality had dissipated. He had followed in the footsteps of Gu Shi and Yuan Du. Indeed, it would not be easy for Yu-Yao to kill Rizhao. Everything else aside, Rizhao's physique was incomparably strong. Lu Yi had to expend a lot of effort to defeat Lionheart because his physique was too strong. Yuan Du and the others had been in Rizhao's league for many years. In terms of physique, they were many times stronger than Lionheart. Even if they were trapped and unable to resist, Lu Yi would have to use the sword draw or the great windmill secret technique to have a chance to kill them. However, the talent tree's devouring was unreasonable. A strong physique could not stop the roots of the talent tree from entering. At this moment, Lu Ye's eyes were closed. After devouring 3 sunshine cultivators in succession, he could vaguely feel that something was wrong with his body. After examining it closely, a look of surprise appeared on his face. On one of the branches of the talent tree, a flower had unknowingly bloomed. The flower was about to wither, and a small black fruit was in the process of growing at the base of the flower. For some reason, when Lu Yi saw the black fruit, he felt an inexplicable sense of unease. There was no reason for it, but he could feel that once the black fruit matured, something bad would happen to him. He thought of the previous Dao tree successor, Chao Nian. From the looks of it, Chao Nian must have also gone through this stage. The great change in his temperament should be related to this black fruit. The Dao tree could burn everything in the world, but it could not burn the 7 emotions and 6 desires of living beings. These emotions that could not be burned gathered on the talent tree, bloomed, and bore fruit. When it matured, it would completely change a person's temperament. Even at this moment, the black fruit had just taken shape and was far from maturing. Lu Yi could feel that his temperament had changed. It seemed that he was more easily angered and violent. Previously, when he was training in the Azura field, he had tried to devour many shadows. However, that training did not have much of an effect on him. Lu Yi had always thought that the rumors were wrong or exaggerated. Only today did he realize that devouring shadows was completely different from devouring real living beings. This made him slightly wary. He pulled out his consciousness and sensed his spiritual source. It was not perfect yet, but it was not far away. The foundation of the 3 sunshine cultivators had greatly improved the quality of his spiritual source. At this rate, if he could devour 2 more sunshine cultivators. When this thought arose, it was difficult to suppress. At this moment, Lu Yi suddenly sensed that a large amount of life force had intruded into his sea of blood. The sea of blood was formed by his own blood and qi. Even the slightest change in it could not escape his detection. Thus, after a moment's thought, Lu Yi knew what had happened. This is really... Lu Yi tossed Chen Xuanba's corpse aside and took a step forward. His figure had already disappeared. There was a path to heaven, but you refused to take it. There was no door to hell, but you insisted on barging in. Ancestor, where are you? Within the sea of blood, Yuan Qing continuously shouted, his face filled with fear and unease. He had brought 100 Yu Yao here, but now he could not see a single person beside him. The viscous sea of blood around him made it difficult for him to move, and even the flow of his transcendence energy was much more difficult. However, that was fine. He believed that Yuan Du was still alive, and should be somewhere at this moment. As long as he could meet up with Yuan Du, he would be able to protect himself. In addition, the 2 sunshine cultivators, Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba, were also in this sea of blood. Lu Yi only had 1 Yu Yao. No matter what, he had no ability to kill 3 sunshine cultivators. He did not know what that golden light that could seal sunshine was, but the sunshine cultivators would definitely be able to break free quickly. At that time, they would be able to easily break through the sea of blood and allow this world to see the light of day once more. As he looked around, he suddenly stepped on something. He hurriedly looked down. What he saw instantly turned into a look of shock and horror. This was because the thing on the ground was a corpse, and it was a desiccated corpse at that. The corpse's face vaguely resembled Chen Xuanba's, and even the clothes on it were Chen Xuanba's. No. Impossible. Yuan Cheng hurriedly took a few steps back, unwilling to believe what he was seeing. That Chen Xuanba was sunshine, so how could he have died so silently? Suddenly, Yuan Cheng bumped into something. He turned his head and saw that in the sea of blood, a figure had appeared behind him at some point. This figure was silently staring at him with a pair of scarlet eyes. That gaze, it was like a hungry wolf that had just seen a delicious meal. Lu Yi. Yuan Cheng was shocked. He immediately tried to circulate his transcendence energy, but a figure flashed in front of him. Pain shot through his body, and his consciousness blurred. He had just become a Yu Yao not long ago. How could he be a match for Lu Yi? In the next instant, an indescribable pain shot through his body, causing Yuan Cheng to cry out in pain. After a few breaths, his voice dissipated. Lu Yi tossed Yuan Cheng's corpse aside, and his figure disappeared into the sea of blood. He muttered in dissatisfaction, "Too weak." He had finally discovered a pattern. The stronger the cultivator, the greater the benefits he would receive after devouring them. The 3 Yu Yao who had entered the sea of blood had greatly improved his transcendence energy. However, the Yu Yao who had entered the sea of blood were much weaker. For example, Yuan Cheng, who had just become a Yu Yao not long ago, the improvements he received to his transcendence energy were practically negligible. This was most likely related to the quality of their transcendence energy. The higher the quality of the transcendence energy he devoured, the greater the benefits he would receive. The effects of devouring Yu Yao were not as good as Yu Yao's. Fortunately, there were many of them. More than 100 Yu Yao were scattered all over the sea of blood. They couldn't find their enemies, nor could they see their companions. The only thing they could do was continuously circulate their power and bombard their surroundings. This was also the best way to deal with the sea of blood. In the end, the sea of blood was also a kind of secret technique. Since it was a secret technique, it naturally had a limit. As long as one could break through this limit, they would be able to break through it. In the beginning, Lu Yi's sea of blood was indeed turbulent under the ferocious attacks of the Yu Yao. From the outside, it looked like it could shatter at any moment. However, after enduring the most dangerous early stages, as time passed, the sea of blood became more and more stable, gradually calming down. Silently, the vitality of the Yu Yao dissipated one after another, and the cultivators who had entered the sea of blood with Yuan Qing perished one after another. In their place, Lu Yi's transcendence energy continuously approached perfection. The continuous devouring caused him to lose himself in thought. At first, he still remembered to occasionally check on the changes in the black fruit on the innate talent tree, constantly keeping an eye on himself. However, as his transcendence energy became more and more complete, and the pleasure of devouring continued to deepen, he completely forgot about everything else. There was only one thought in his mind: to devour everything. After an unknown period of time, there was not a single living being left in the sea of blood. Just as Lu Yi was about to head toward the closest and densest source of vitality, his body suddenly shuddered, and he froze on the spot. In this instant, it was as if some extremely miraculous change had occurred in his body. It was precisely this change that had affected his mind and interrupted his instinctive plan. He was abruptly shocked. His condition just now was very strange. When he checked his innate talent tree again, he discovered that the original flower had long since disappeared. The black fruit had already grown to the size of a fist, and its black color had deepened considerably. In fact, it was even glowing. This thing was already not far away from ripening. A wave of lingering fear washed over him. Fortunately, the changes in his body had brought him back to his senses. Otherwise, if this had continued, he was afraid that he would have followed in Chao Nian's footsteps, never to return from that path of no return. That was something he absolutely could not accept. I can't devour anymore. He secretly made up his mind. Only now did he have the time to investigate the changes that had occurred in his body. End of chapter. Chapter 1988. Actually, Li didn't need to check. He already had a hunch. Even though he wasn't actively doing anything, his magic power was flowing madly through his body at an unprecedented speed. His spiritual aperture's magic source was also burning hot. He had perfected his magic source. Lu Yi felt a chill run down his spine. It hadn't been easy. When he was in the early and middle stages of the Moon Jade realm, he didn't have a clear idea of what to do. When he realized that he had to polish his magic source to perfection in order to condense the flower of Qi, he was already in the late stages of the Moon Jade realm. Only then did he set off for the Azura domain. He obtained many benefits in the Azura domain. When he returned to the Wanxiang Sea, he bought some, and Jiu Yan gave him some. He calmed his mind and sensed that his magic power was flowing faster and faster. Lu Yi could faintly feel a burning sensation between his brows. With his experience of condensing the flower of the body, this abnormal change excited him. This was clearly a sign that the flower of Qi was about to condense. He didn't move or react, only allowing his magic power to flow. Time passed. When the scorching heat between his eyebrows reached a limit, something seemed to have suddenly appeared. In the next moment, the rapidly circulating magic power slowly calmed down. Lu Yi hurriedly opened his eyes and flipped his hand. He took out a mirror-like magic treasure from his storage ring and looked at it. Sure enough, he saw the mark of a crescent moon slowly fading between his brows. The flower of Qi had been condensed. This undoubtedly meant that he had reached the peak of the Moon Jade realm. He had passed 2 stages of the 3-flower art. Now, only the flower of God was left. But before that, his magic power was abundant. His Qi and blood were condensed. The Moon Jade realm and the Constellation realm were flawless. Today was the day of the sun. Under normal circumstances, a cultivator would naturally choose a suitable and stable environment to break through to the next realm. At the very least, They had to ensure that they wouldn't be disturbed by others during the process and avoid external factors that could lead to failure. However, Lui had no choice. In order to reach this step, he didn't even hesitate to devour the son of the Wanxiang Sea. The Moon Jade realm was so that he wouldn't have any regrets. Now that the flower of Qi had been condensed, he naturally had to break through to the next realm. Besides, he didn't need a suitable and stable environment. He could break through to the next realm at any time a long time ago. The shackles of life and death for ordinary cultivators could be broken at any time for him. This was the benefit of having a solid foundation, as well as the convenience of reaching the peak of his previous realm. He emptied his mind and no longer restrained his body. When his qi and blood surged and his dermic powers surged, the shackles had already shattered. Lu Ye's body suddenly felt light. Previously, he had devoured the foundations of 3 Rizhao cultivators and 100 Yuyao cultivators. Although his cultivation source had been polished to perfection, what followed was a feeling of fullness. This was because he had devoured not only the cultivation sources of those cultivators, but also their blood essence, transcendence energy, and even their souls, everything. With the accumulation of so many cultivators in Lu Ye's body, it was only natural for Yu Yao to feel bloated. During this period of time, he had even channeled his excess power into his own blood sea. This was also the reason why his blood sea was able to withstand the frenzied attacks of the 100 Yu Yao clones. But at this moment, when that layer of shackles was broken, all the feelings of fullness disappeared without a trace. A joy that was even more intense than when he devoured living beings rose in his heart. Unlike before, this joy would not make him sink into depravity. Instead, it made his mind clear. Lu Yi felt as if his body had undergone an indescribable baptism and sublimation from the inside out. His magic power instantly became several times more vigorous, and it continued to increase. Not only his dermic powers, but his qi and blood as well. Lu Ye's flesh and blood were wriggling, becoming more solid and sturdy. This was undoubtedly a huge change brought about by the advancement of a major realm. The reason why Rizhao's physique was so strong, even for cultivators who were originally dermic cultivators, was because of this baptism during the advancement of a realm. This was the transformation of one's dermic powers from the inside out after many years of accumulation. His spirit sea was also rapidly expanding. The seawater became more solid and deep, and the strength of his soul increased by leaps and bounds. Lu Yi could feel that this change would continue until it gradually stabilized. At that time, his Rizhao realm would be completely stabilized. He clenched his fists lightly. His strength had undergone a tremendous change. He didn't know what level he was at now. After all, he had just advanced and hadn't fought with Rizhao yet. The only thing he knew was that even though he had just advanced, he was definitely not comparable to an ordinary cultivator in the early stages of Rizhao realm. He really wanted to find someone to fight. He wanted to have a fight where fists met flesh and swords saw blood. With this thought in mind, he couldn't hold himself back. Lu Yi couldn't help but frown. It seemed that the black fruit on the talent tree wasn't fully ripe yet, but it was still affecting his temperament. He needed to be vigilant. Suddenly, a strange movement came from his waist. Lu Yi looked down and muttered to himself. Then he unsheathed his blade. "You're awake?" he asked softly. His blade was transformed from the qi of the soldier tribe when it swallowed the Panshan blade. All this time, the qi had been in a deep slumber. This was also a characteristic of the soldier tribe. They were an extremely ancient tribe. They didn't have a physical body and could only transform into various kinds of weapons. If a living creature recognized them as its master, the soldier tribe would fall into a deep slumber. Only when the master died in battle would the soldier tribe awaken again and wait for the next master. Lu Yi didn't activate the Panshan blade just now, but it reacted. This made Lu Yi think that the qi had awakened. But under his perception, the Panshan blade was still the same. The qi didn't show any signs of awakening. If that was the case, then what was the strange movement just now? After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi suddenly thought of something. He immediately channeled his transcendence energy into the Panshan blade. The Panshan blade trembled slightly. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He realized that his guess was correct. The Pan-Shan blade was about to be unsealed. It had been unsealed once before. It was when he first obtained the qi after advancing from a constellation to a yuyao. When he first obtained the qi, it was only a spiritual treasure. When he advanced to a yuyao, it became a transcendent artifact. This wasn't an advancement, because the true Fang blade was of extremely high quality. After it recognized Lu Yi as its master, it planted layers of seals on itself based on Lu Ye's strength at that time. Only when Lu Ye's strength increased would the seals be unsealed. Now that Lu Yi was sunshine, the qi's seals would be unsealed again. This made Lu Yi secretly look forward to it. The qi was already a transcendent artifact. If it was unsealed again, would it become a supreme artifact? Would the qi be a supreme artifact? Lu Yi didn't know, but he would find out soon. He channeled his transcendence energy into the Pan-Shan blade, causing some changes to it. But this wasn't enough. Lu Yi quickly understood the reason. Sunshine was the cultivation of a god. Only channeling his transcendence energy wouldn't be enough. With this thought in mind, he wrapped the Pan-Shan blade with his divine sense. The Pan-Shan blade trembled more and more. In just a few breaths of time, a dim light flashed across the Pan-Shan blade. An extremely sharp aura emanated from the blade, disappearing in a flash. Lu Yi looked at the Pan-Shan saber that had been unsealed once again and frowned slightly. This was different from what he'd imagined. The Pan-Shan blade didn't seem to be a supreme artifact. Compared to before, the blade didn't seem to have changed too much. But he flicked his finger on the Pan-Shan blade. A bloody gash appeared on his hand, and blood flowed out. The Pan-Shan blade seemed to have become sharper and more durable. This undoubtedly made it more suitable for sunshine cultivators. He wouldn't have to worry about the blade being damaged in battle. It would also be more convenient for him to kill his enemies. If the Pan-Shan blade was a high-grade transcendent artifact before, then it should be a top-grade transcendent artifact now. Lu Yi was slightly disappointed that it wasn't a supreme artifact, but he could still accept it. He exhaled softly. The flower of qi had been condensed, and sunshine had advanced. Now it was time to end everything. With a thought, the sea of blood surrounding him retracted. Lu Ye's figure appeared in the blink of an eye. 3 of the 5 sunshine guardians of the Wanxiang Sea had died. Only 2 remained. Including Zi Xian's He Yun, there were 3 sunshine cultivators to deal with. Previously he only had Ma Bin, Luan Xiaoa, and Yen Miao. They were evenly matched. Now that he was here, he should be able to change the situation. Right, there was still Hua Xi. With her on the Wanxiang Sea, no amount of sunshine would be enough to kill. Lu Yi was about to look in Hua Xi's direction, but he couldn't help but frown. He turned his head and looked in the direction of the 3 World Islands Trade District. That place was supposed to be peaceful. Even when Yuan Du attacked the 3 World Island, he didn't intend to affect that area. Too many powers were involved there. If the battle really did affect that area, he would offend too many people. But at this moment, the trade district was filled with wails and cries of war. Countless cultivators were fighting there. The streets were littered with corpses and minced meat. What was going on? Lu Yi didn't understand. Even if the incident in the 3 Worlds Island was rather big, the business district should not have been affected. And yet, the business district was already in a state of chaos. Countless shops had been destroyed. Lu Yi even saw cultivators looting goods in the process. He turned his head and saw that the cultivators around the 3 World Island had disappeared. Even the sunshine cultivators who were fighting were gone. He was the only one standing in the air in the area where the cultivators were stationed. Where was Hua Xi? Lu Ye's heart tightened. He vaguely realized that during the half-day when he was concentrating on condensing the flower of qi and advancing to sunshine, something had happened. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so chaotic. Looking at the pill room, Hua Xi, who was supposed to be standing there, was nowhere to be seen. Lu Ye's expression changed. He hurriedly took out a sound talisman to send a message to Hua Xi. At this moment, there was a sound not far away, and a familiar aura came. He hurriedly turned his head and saw the water of the Wanxiang Sea churning. A familiar figure appeared in his field of vision. Who else could it be but Hua Xi? End of chapter. Chapter 1989. Hua Si stood quietly on the sea beside the three-world island. Lu Yi took a closer look and realized that she wasn't standing on the sea, but rather on the back of her pet beast. Her pet beast, which possessed the Pishio bloodline, had shrunk to the size of a table, just enough for Hua Si to stand on. Their eyes met and Lu Yi hurriedly flew towards her. Just as he was about to ask about the situation here, Lu Yi couldn't help but be taken aback when he met Hua Si's eyes. Because her eyes gave him a very unfamiliar feeling. There wasn't the slightest hint of joy from a long-awaited reunion, only surprise and uncertainty. She looked like she didn't recognize him at all. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi asked nervously. Hua Si's expression was a little blank as she shook her head and said, "I don't know, I've forgotten a lot of things. Or you, why do I feel like you're very close and important, but I can't remember who you are?" Lu Ye's expression stiffened and his face twitched. "Don't joke around." Hua Si didn't have any other bad habits, but she liked to play pranks. Lu Yi was deeply affected by this. Back then, when he saw her holding a child, he even mistakenly thought that he had a child, but it turned out that it was actually someone else's child. At that time, Hua Si even tried her best to show him her motherly love. Hua Si didn't say anything. She just looked at him quietly, her beautiful eyes as deep as the abyss. Lu Ye's heart was in turmoil. He reached out and grabbed one of her hands. Circulating his magic power, he spread out his divine sense and carefully examined her. A moment later, Lu Yi looked at the woman in front of him with a complicated expression. "Do you really not remember me?" There was nothing wrong with Hua Si's body. In fact, it was very good. Her magic power was incomparably pure, and her foundation was solid. What was even more incredible was that her cultivation had reached the late moon jade stage, only one step away from the sunshine stage. He couldn't help but wonder if Hua Si was playing with him. But after thinking about it carefully, Hua Si must have undergone some unknown changes during the years she was sealed. Otherwise, her strength couldn't have improved so much. Perhaps these changes had affected her memory. Hua Si shook her head slowly. "It's okay." Lu Yi smiled and held her hand. "Take it slow." As long as she was fine, everything was fine. As for her missing memories, she would be able to recover them sooner or later. Moreover, now was not the time to investigate this matter. While talking to Hua Si, Lu Yi vaguely sensed that the entire Wanxiang Sea was in chaos. Everywhere, there were actually quite a number of Rizhao fighting each other. "First, tell me what happened just now." "Something must have happened while I was leveling up to Rizhao." "Formless palace," Hua Si said. Through her explanation, Lu Yi finally understood where the chaos in the myriad phenomenon sea had come from. The source was actually Yaya. Yaya had previously broken 2 of her jade bracelets, recovering her sealed cultivation and memories. After helping Lu Yi and the others to injure Yuan Du, she quickly escaped. After she left, a portal suddenly opened, and a Bone Clan and a demon race cultivator chased after her. The 2 Rizhao chased in the direction of Yaya's escape, but they left the door open. Lu Yi had actually noticed this at the time, but didn't pay much attention to it. This was because a portal opened through a secret technique from a distance shouldn't be maintained for too long. Just as Lu Yi spread out the sea of blood, wantonly devouring the sunshine and moon jade of the Wanxiang Sea, and then leveling up to Rizhao, a large number of cultivators suddenly rushed out from the portal. Surprisingly, there were more than 10 Rizhao leading a large number of moon jade and star constellations, descending from an unknown place to the Wanxiang Sea. This unforeseen event caught the 2 sides fighting by surprise. This was because these cultivators who suddenly appeared were indiscriminate, and all those who were not on their side were enemies. The Rizhao who were fighting before were all involved. From afar, I heard someone shouting something about Formless Palace, so I guessed that these cultivators should be from this faction. Formless Palace. Lu Yi thought for a moment and realized that he had never heard of this faction, let alone where it was located. But this should be the faction where Yaya came from. From the looks of it, the portal didn't disappear immediately after the 2 Rizhao passed through, causing Formless Palace to investigate the situation in the Wanxiang Sea. Perhaps they used some method to strengthen the portal, and then invaded on a large scale. To any faction, the Wanxiang Sea was a piece of delicious cake. Usually, they wouldn't have the chance to invade, but today's chaos gave Formless Palace hope, so they acted decisively. Not to mention completely occupying the Wanxiang Sea, they only needed to ransack the major spiritual islands, and Formless Palace would be able to make a fortune. After knowing the reason, Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect the source of this chaos to be Yaya. But when Yaya helped him, she probably didn't think so much. Formless Palace's subsequent actions were just following the trend. To be able to send out more than 10 Rizhao after sending out the 2 Rizhao, this Formless Palace had a strong foundation. "You'll stay here and protect me?" Lu Yi asked. Wan Xiaoa, Yan Miao, and the rest couldn't stay. They were Rizhao, and they were 2 obvious targets. Only Hua Xi stayed nearby after the chaos broke out. She kept an eye on Lu Ye's situation and didn't let anyone disturb him. Those Rizhao from Formless Palace were busy attacking the major spiritual islands and looting resources. Naturally, they didn't pay much attention to Lu Ye's situation. The Wanxiang Sea was in complete chaos. This was something that hadn't happened for many years. Tracing back to the last chaos in the Wanxiang Sea, it might have been tens of thousands of years ago. Many thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind. He vaguely sensed that this chaos wouldn't last long. There were more than 5 Rizhao from the Wanxiang Galaxy. There were others. Once they received the news, they would definitely rush over to quell the chaos. They were not the only ones. If the forces behind the other spiritual islands knew that their spiritual islands were robbed and their cultivators were killed, they would definitely not sit back and do nothing. They would definitely send reinforcements. With the connection of the worm path, as long as the news was transmitted in time, it wouldn't take much time. Formless Palace should also know about the situation in the Wanxiang Sea, so their current mentality should be to get something and run. But what about after they left? The Rizhao from the various galaxies gathered in the Wanxiang Sea. What kind of chaos would it be? The Rizhao from the major galaxies were willing to abide by the rules of the Wanxiang Sea and not come here easily because they believed that the Wanxiang Galaxy could protect their own interests and the safety of their cultivators. In fact, the Wanxiang Galaxy had done a good job for so many years. They didn't give others a chance to interfere. The Formless Palace's chaos had ruined the reputation of the Wanxiang Galaxy. They would definitely lose the trust of the major galaxies, giving their Rizhao a reason to interfere in the Wanxiang Sea. Perhaps from now on, the Rizhao from the local galaxy wouldn't be the only Rizhao on the Wanxiang Sea. Other Rizhao could also come and take charge. Although this was only Lu Ye's guess, it was very likely to happen. He was extremely glad that he had advanced to Rizhao at this time. Otherwise, the 3-world island wouldn't have much say at that stage. Who wouldn't covet such a top-grade spiritual island? He took out the sound talisman to check and found that both Yan Miao and Luan Xiaoa could still transmit messages. This meant that the 2 women were still alive. As for Ma Bin, Lu Yi wasn't worried at all. The famous Green Demon King wouldn't die so easily. The chaos in the Wanxiang Sea was unavoidable, so what should they do to prepare for the future? Moreover, he had killed 3 Nikidoresu from the Wanxiang Galaxy. He had formed a deadly feud with the local galaxy, and Ma Bin was on his side. Under normal circumstances, there would be no place for the cultivators of the 3 realms in the vast Wanxiang Sea. Previously, Lu Yi had been forced to retreat and give up the 3-world island. He was still willing to do so. However, now that he had advanced to Rizhao and had a trump card like Hua Xi, he couldn't help but think differently. Why should the 3-world cultivators retreat and give up the 3-world island? This was the foundation that everyone had painstakingly built up. Thinking of this, hostility grew in his heart. The 3-world island was too small. Why not take the opportunity to control the Wanxiang Sea? In this way, the 3-world cultivators could have anything they wanted in the future. The Jade Snail Galaxy would also become a famous top galaxy in the universe sooner or later. Yes, with his current foundation, he was actually qualified to control the Wanxiang Sea. Once this thought appeared, he couldn't suppress it anymore. If it were in the past, Lu Yi might have considered it more. However, the black fruit on the talent tree still affected him greatly. This also caused him to be easily swayed by his emotions when considering things. Lu Yi suddenly turned his head to look at the chaotic three-world island. He held Hua Xi's waist and said, "Keep your beast and don't leave my side." A familiar scent lingered at the tip of Lu Ye's nose. He greedily inhaled a breath. Hua Xi frowned secretly. She acutely sensed that something was wrong with Lu Ye's state. However, she still kept her beast and hugged it in her arms, allowing Lu Yi to hold her. In the next instant, two figures swept across the sky above the three-world island. Lu Yi coldly swept his gaze across. He could tell at a glance that some of the cultivators on the island were different. These cultivators' auras were especially arrogant, unrestrained, and unbridled. If he wasn't mistaken, these cultivators with arrogant auras should be from the Formless Palace. At this moment, these Formless Palace cultivators were looting the major stores under the lead of the two Yu Yao. Perhaps some people had resisted before, but they were all killed without exception. Therefore, in the face of these outsiders looting, the cultivators of the major stores didn't dare to resist at all. After all, given the current situation on the three-world island, the two Yu Yao were enough to suppress everything. The Formless Palace had obviously investigated the situation here, so they left behind a few people to deal with the aftermath. Lu Yi was enraged. He immediately shouted, "Stop looting in my house." As soon as he finished speaking, a blood-red light shone around him. Blood arrows shot out from the sky. The Formless Palace cultivators who were looting everywhere, whether they were out in the open or in the dark. Some of them were even inside their houses. At this moment, they all suffered a devastating blow. The blood arrows pierced through the bodies of one cultivator after another, taking away their vitality. Even the two Yu Yao who had stayed behind to guard the stores weren't spared. They didn't even see who had attacked them before they lost their lives in a daze. End of chapter. Chapter 1990. In an instant, the chaos on the three-world island was quelled. Countless fleeing cultivators looked up and saw Lu Ye's face. They were all moved to tears. The cultivators of the Formless Palace were unscrupulous. Not only did they plunder resources, but they were also merciless when they killed people. Some of the Formless Palace's cultivators even did many beastly things, causing many beautiful cultivators to suffer. Now that these evildoers were killed by Lu Yi, they were naturally grateful and finally felt a sense of security in this chaos. After dealing with the three-world island, Lu Yi turned and left. The Formless Palace's cultivators landed near the three-world island, so they were very familiar with the situation here, so it was unlikely that they would send more people over. In other words, as long as the merchants on the three-world island did not run around, there was a high probability that there would be no danger. Lu Yi took Hua Xi and flew in that direction, following a familiar aura that came from afar. After advancing to Sunshine, not only did his foundation improve, but his flying speed also increased by leaps and bounds. He sensed Luan Xiao and Yen Miao's auras in that direction, so they should be fighting with someone. Given the current situation, of course, he had to gather his own people first. But before that, "Tell me in detail about the golden light you shot out earlier," Lu Yi said. He needed to understand Hua Xi's current abilities. The vigorous aura blew on Hua Xi's ear, making her feel a little numb. Her eyes blurred, but they quickly regained their cold nobility. "That golden light was not my ability. It was Little Melon's ability," Hua Xi explained. "Little Melon." Lu Yi lowered his head and glanced at the Pixiu in her arms, the corner of his eyes twitching. As long as Little Melon devours enough water from the Wanxiang Sea or the corresponding spiritual energy, it can shoot out that golden light. It can even seal Sunshine. However, Little Melon's body can only store enough energy to shoot out 2 rays of golden light. After it's used up, it needs to be replenished. This may be related to our strength. When it becomes stronger, it should be able to store more energy. 2 rays of golden light. Lu Yi understood. No wonder Hua Xi did not do anything after she first imprisoned Gu Shi and then Chen Xuanba. It turned out that at that time, the energy stored in Little Melon's body had been used up. This was in line with the power displayed by the ancient coin, but compared to the ancient coin that could only emit a golden light and needed to be replenished, after Small Melon swallowed and inherited this ability, it was obviously more useful than the ancient coin alone. However, whether it was 1 or 2 rays of golden light, it wasn't a big deal. If it was placed somewhere else, it might be very troublesome for little Melon to replenish it, but this was the Wanxiang Sea. As long as it was thrown into the sea, it would be replenished in a short moment. The reason why Lu Yi had the idea of controlling the myriad elephant sea was entirely because of the confidence that Hua Xiai gave him. On the 10,000 elephant sea, Hua Xiai, who had mastered Small Melon, was an invincible existence in a one-on-one battle. Not bad, not bad. Lu Yi patted Little Melon's head. Gua! Small Melon seemed to be a little unhappy as it rolled its 2 bulging eyes. As they flew, they passed by several chaotic spiritual islands. All of them were plundered by the cultivators of the Formless Palace. Moreover, the Formless Palace was selective in the targets they plundered. They did not even look at the spiritual islands below the high-class spiritual islands because there was nothing to gain. The targets they plundered were all high-class spiritual islands and top-class spiritual islands. The top-class spiritual islands, in particular, were their most important targets. It was unknown how many cultivators were fleeing. However, in such a chaotic situation, where could the cultivators escape to? Rather than running away recklessly, it was better to stay on the island and gather the strength of the entire spiritual island. Perhaps then they might have the ability to fight. Moreover, the cultivators who could occupy the high-class spiritual islands were all from wealthy backgrounds. They were all proud and unyielding. Many of them would not be able to give up their home base and escape. Therefore, most of the cultivators on the high-class spiritual islands stayed on their own spiritual islands. If it was the case on the high-class spiritual islands, it would be even more so for the top-class spiritual islands. Lu Yi followed the trail with Hua Xiai and saw 5 figures fighting in the sky from afar. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao were among them. What surprised Lu Yi was that Mu Qing was also among them. Lu Yi did not have a good impression of this woman. During the battle with Zixian, he was stopped by Yuan Du when he chased the fleeing Lionheart to the periphery of the island of versatility. Mu Qing also appeared at that time, but she did not uphold justice for him. If Jiao Yan was not present at that time, Yuan Du might have really done it himself. Previously, Luan Xiao and Yen Miao teamed up to fight Mu Qing. The 2 women were not her match even when they joined forces. It was clear that Mu Qing's strength was not ordinary. However, what surprised Lu Yi was that the 2 sides who were originally fighting fiercely were now showing signs of joining forces. The 3 women were currently fighting with 2 strangers, Rizhao. What surprised Lu Yi even more was that one of the 2 Rizhao was actually from the insect clan. As for the other one, if Lu Yi was not mistaken, he should be from the 3-eyed clan. This was an uncommon clan, but this clan had a 3rd eye between their eyebrows, so it was easy to recognize them. The 3-eyed clan called it the Heavenly Eye. Those who could cultivate secret arts with this eye often had mysterious abilities. At this moment, the insect clan was fighting in close combat. Relying on his rough skin and thick flesh, he disrupted the 3 women's formation. The heavenly eye of the 3-eyed clan was already open, constantly shooting out mysterious light from it, making the 3 women flustered. There were also powerful divine senses clashing, invisible dangers lurking in the shadows. After all, Luan Xiao and Yen Miao had just advanced to Rizhao not long ago. The previous battle with Mu Qing was their first battle after advancing to Rizhao. Their performance was not satisfactory, and now they were even more strained. If Mu Qing had not helped them from time to time, they would have been in danger. Even so, Luan Xiao and Yen Miao were still injured. Lu Yi didn't bother to hide his presence. Naturally, the 5 Rikhas who were fighting each other immediately sensed his presence. After realizing it was him, Luan Xiao could not help but be overjoyed. Junior brother Lu. She did not expect Lu Yi to have advanced to Rizhao. From the looks of it, Lu Yi spread out the blood sea at the 3-world island to hide his advancement to Rizhao. As expected of junior brother Lu, the speed of his cultivation advancement was really fast. If she hadn't advanced a little earlier, she would have been left in the dust in terms of cultivation. This distraction was immediately taken advantage of by the 3-eyed clan's Rizhao. A mysterious light shot out from his heavenly eye and was about to hit Luan Xiao. Yen Miao could not save her in time because she was entangled by the insect clan's Rizhao. At the crucial moment, a mirror appeared out of thin air and blocked in front of Luan Xiaoa. The mysterious light hit the mirror. The mirror was undamaged, but the mysterious light was reflected back and hit the insect clan's Rizhao, causing him to pause. Yen Miao took the opportunity to slow down. Although she knew that Mu Qing's action was to protect herself, because the three women were not a match for the insect clan's Rizhao, and if they lost Luan Xiaoa, she and Yen Miao would be like fish on a chopping board, but Luan Xiaoa still looked at Mu Qing gratefully. The debt of saving his life was real. "Don't be distracted," Mu Qing shouted. Although she was surprised that Lu Yi had advanced to Rizhao, the two opponents were very strong. One was a newly advanced Rizhao, whose cultivation had not stabilized yet. If he forcibly joined the battle, not only would he not be of help, but he would also be a burden. While speaking, Mu Qing sent a message to Lu Yi, "Island Master Lu, please move from the side and disturb them." Lu Yi ignored her and went straight for the three-eyed clan's Rizhao. Although he had just arrived at the battlefield, he saw clearly that the three-eyed clan's Rizhao was more troublesome than the insect clan. As long as he was dealt with, the insect clan's Rizhao would not be a problem. Seeing that Lu Yi did not listen to her advice, Mu Qing was angry, but there was nothing she could do. After all, just half a day ago, they were enemies. Now, they were forced to cooperate because of the Formless Palace's invasion. Lu Yi did not cooperate with her, so she could not do anything. Fortunately, the news had been sent out, and the other senior brothers were on their way. She just needed to delay for a while. As she was thinking, she suddenly saw a golden light flashing by Lu Ye's side. Mu Qing's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively wanted to dodge. She had seen this golden light twice before. Neither Gu Shi nor Qin Xuanba could dodge it. Once they were hit, they were immediately imprisoned. She had never seen such an unreasonable golden light. At that time, she had observed that the golden light came from a noble Yuyao woman. However, after the Formless Palace's invasion, she had not seen the woman's figure again. Until now, the three-eyed clan's Rizhao reacted quickly. He dodged to the side almost at the same time the golden light was shot out. However, what shocked him was that the golden light, which he should have dodged, still hit his body. The three-eyed clan's Rizhao's expression stiffened. At this moment his body and magic power were all sealed. He could not summon any power at all. His entire body fell into the 10,000 elephant sea like a kite with a broken string. He was scared out of his wits. He had heard about the terrifying erosion of the 10,000 elephant sea's water. If he fell into the sea in this state, how could he survive? The only thing he could summon was his soul power. "Save me!" His soul power surged wildly. As he attacked in all directions, he sent a message to his insect clan companion. The insect clan's Rizhao's reaction was not slow either. His companion was hit and fell into the sea. He did not wait for his companion to call for help. He forced Mu Qing and Miao Miao to retreat with one move and rushed toward his companion. However, at this moment, another golden light hit him head-on. The golden light covered his body. The insect clan's Rizhao's body also stiffened, and he fell into the sea. The last thing he saw from the corner of his eyes was a human cultivator rushing toward him with a woman in his arms. The sword light was as bright as a waterfall. Blood rained down. Mu Qing was frozen in place. She stared blankly at the horrifying scene in front of her. For a moment, she could not believe her eyes. She clearly saw that the three-eyed clan's Rizhao's body was shattered the moment Lu Yi brushed past him. Then came the insect clan's Rizhao. The insect clan's innately strong carapace was difficult to damage even for Rizhao of the same level. However, under Lu Ye's long sword, it was as fragile as paper. End of chapter. Chapter 1991. The powerful insect clan and Rizhao from the three-eyed clan died on the spot in just a few seconds. Even though Mu Qing knew that the terrifying power of the golden light had an extremely strong sealing effect, Lu Ye's terrifying killing intent still terrified her. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, it would have been hard to believe that someone who had just advanced to Rizhao and had not even stabilized his realm could have such ruthless means. Therefore, when Lu Yi killed the two rises and turned to look at her, Mu Qing didn't hesitate at all. A layer of blood mist burst out from her body, and she activated some unknown secret technique. Her whole body turned into a rainbow light and fled into the distance. At that moment, she felt a cold, murderous intent from Lu Ye's gaze. Her decisive response surprised Lu Yi slightly. She only glanced in the direction she fled in before withdrawing her gaze. The matter of the Wanxiang Sea could be dealt with later. The priority now was still the formless palace. Are you okay? Lu Yi looked at Luan Xiao and Yen Miao. The two girls shook their heads. Whether it was the battle with Mu Qing or the battle with the three-eyed insect clan, they only suffered minor injuries. It was not a big problem. Where is Senior Ma Bin? Lu Yi asked. The vast Wanxiang Sea was now extremely chaotic. There were movements and aftershocks of battles everywhere, but he couldn't sense Ma Bin's aura. This was undoubtedly not right. Ma Bin was Rizhao. Even if his injuries had not healed, as long as he fought, his aura would leak out. Unless he was no longer in the Wanxiang Sea. Yen Miao said, when the people from the formless palace appeared, Mo Wenli went to fight. He Yun escaped and Senior Ma Bin chased after him. Lu Yi was stunned. This old senior from the 9 states had a strong killing intent. He was clearly not in a good state, but he still went to kill others. However, since he did so, he must have a plan in mind. Lu Yi nodded and turned to look around. After confirming his current location, he thought of something and said, Senior sisters, this place is not far from Four Corner Island. I'll have to trouble you to take care of it. Four Corner Island did not have Rizhao to hold the fort. Furthermore, the spiritual island that they were occupying was the Baiyue of the past. They would definitely be targeted by the formless palace. If Rizhao did not make a move, it would be fine. With Four Corner Island's foundation, they could barely hold on for a while. However, once Rizhao made a move, it would definitely be difficult for Four Corner Island to resist. Four Corner Island and Three World Island had always had a good relationship. In the past few months, Guardian Yao had secretly helped Lu Yi many times. Now that Lu Yi was in trouble, she naturally couldn't sit by and do nothing. Luan Xiao and Yen Miao nodded slightly. They didn't stop and immediately flew in the direction of Four Corner Island. Lu Yi continued to fly in another direction with Hua Ci in her arms. The Pixiu pet beast in her arms was nowhere to be seen. Evidently, she had tossed it into the omniform sea to devour the seawater. Lu Yi looked down as he flew. He could vaguely see the shadow of the pet beast following closely behind him. Its speed was slower than his, but as long as he brought Hua Ci along, this little guy would be able to find him on its own. Hence, he didn't have to worry about it getting lost. In the entire omniform sea, there were many forces on the various spiritual islands. However, there were only 2 places that Lu Yi was concerned about other than his own island. One was Four Corner Island, which Luan Xiao and Yen Miao were heading to. The other was Five Color Island, where Tao Wu was. In the initial stages of Three World Islands development, they encountered a huge crisis. It was Tao Wu who first expressed his full support and opened a branch of Five Color Merchant Guild on Three World Island. Formless Palace would definitely not let go of a top-notch spiritual island like Five Color Island. Hence, no one knew what the current situation was. However, Lu Yi could feel that in the direction of Five Color Island, Rizhao's aura was rampant. No one was prepared for Formless Palace's sudden invasion of the Omniform Sea. Most importantly, they had too much Rizhao this time and the timing was too perfect. It was when Three World Island was in conflict. The 5 Sunshine Protectors were all distracted by Three World Island. Among them, 3 died in battle while the other 2 were distracted. This allowed Formless Palace to successfully invade. If it were any other time, Yuan Du and the others would have quickly dealt with the opening of such a door, not giving Formless Palace a chance to invade. When Lu Yi rushed to Five Color Island, the entire place was shrouded in a gloomy fog. Cries of agony could be heard everywhere. Most of the buildings on Five Color Island had collapsed. Countless cultivators had died tragically on the spot. Intense battles broke out everywhere. It was obvious that the cultivators on Five Color Island were fighting like trapped beasts. Lu Ye's expression was gloomy because he couldn't sense Tao Wu's aura. There were many Yu Yao on the island, but the aura of those Yu Yao was tyrannical. It was obvious that they were all from Formless Palace. When Lu Yi arrived, a spiritual force landed on him. Following that, a faint voice sounded, "I can finally move my muscles." As the voice sounded, a figure rushed out from the depths of Five Color Island. It was obviously Formless Palace's Sunshine, who was in charge of leading the team to Five Color Island. Lu Yi looked up and saw a brawny man with an overbearing physique appear in his field of vision. This guy wasn't tall, but he gave off an extremely sturdy feeling. Moreover, in terms of aura alone, Lu Yi was inferior to him. Lu Yi, who had just advanced to Sunshine, couldn't tell what level the other party was at. He vaguely estimated that the other party was at least in the middle stage of Sunshine. Moreover, judging from the other party's physique and chi and blood, he was obviously a body cultivator. He looked like a human. As for whether he was a human or not, Lu Yi didn't know. In this world, there were many races that looked similar to humans, but in fact, they weren't. He led the team here to plunder the resources of Five Color Island. He didn't meet a decent opponent at all. It could be said that Lu Yi came at the right time. After sensing for a while, the brawny man frowned and showed a dissatisfied expression. "What's going on?" "A little guy who just advanced to Sunshine not long ago." Saying so, he raised his fist. "I'll crush you with one punch." Lu Yi just looked at him quietly, indifferent to his arrogance. It wasn't until the brawny man was 100 feet away from him that he suddenly patted Hua Xi's waist. In the next moment, a golden light shot out from the Pai Xiu in Hua Xi's arms. On the way here, the Pai Xiu had already replenished its energy and returned to Hua Xi's side. The distance of 100 feet was covered in an instant. The brawny man's arrogant expression changed to one of astonishment. His body crossed the space and rushed in front of Lu Yi. Then he saw Lu Yi raise a long sword. The sword's edge was cold and unrestrained. It was as if the brawny man had taken the initiative to collide with the Pan Shan sword. The brawny man desperately tried to dodge, but he couldn't activate the Fa Li in his body. The sudden change caused him to collide directly with the tip of the Pan Shan sword. The sword sank 3 inches into his flesh. Blood flowed freely. Lu Yi raised an eyebrow. He was secretly surprised by the brawny man's strong physique. Although he didn't use much strength, the Pan Shan sword's quality had greatly improved after he advanced to Sunshine. It hadn't taken him much effort to kill the insectoid before. The brawny man's physique was even tougher than the insectoid's carapace from before. Lu Yi exerted strength in his hand, and the Pan Shan sword pierced through his body. The brawny man's face contorted in intense pain. His eyes were bloodshot. He didn't know what the golden light was, but his Fa Li had been sealed. He was like a fish on a chopping board. This situation terrified him. Only now did he realize that Sunshine, who had just advanced to Sunshine, dared to come after him. He must have a trump card. Fortunately, he wasn't stupid. Since he couldn't activate his Fa Li, he immediately tried to activate his soul power. But Lu Yi had already pulled out his Pan Shan sword and kicked the brawny man. After working together with Hua Ci several times, Lu Yi discovered a problem. The treasure coin's power wasn't without flaws. This flaw was soul power. The treasure coin's golden light couldn't seal Sunshine's soul power. Sunshine's soul power was so strong that it was impossible for anyone other than him to resist it. Lu Yi wasn't too worried about himself. Even if Sunshine's cultivation was higher than his, he had the Rainbow Divine Lotus to stabilize his soul. As long as he didn't suffer too much impact, he wouldn't be in any danger. But Hua Ci was different. With Yu Yao's cultivation, she wouldn't have a good ending if she was attacked by Sunshine's soul power. Even her Pishio pet beast wouldn't be able to withstand it. So when Lu Yi sensed that the brawny man was about to activate his soul power, he immediately kicked him away. Lu Yi used his strength cleverly. The brawny man only flew a few hundred feet before he fell into the 10,000 Elephant Sea in an arc, creating a huge splash. This guy had thick skin and flesh, so killing him was troublesome. Since that was the case, throwing him into the 10,000 Elephant Sea was the same. No matter how high his cultivation was or how strong his physical body was, if he fell into the 10,000 Elephant Sea while sealed, only death awaited him. Yuan Du was able to survive earlier because he hadn't fallen into the sea while sealed, so he could still struggle for a while. On this side, Rizhao's confrontation only took a short moment to determine the winner. On the five-colored island, not many people noticed the battle here. The cultivators of the five-colored island were busy fighting back, while the cultivators of the formless palace were busy killing and looting. Until a sea of blood suddenly spread out, covering the sky and covering the earth. It descended from the sky and enveloped the entire five-colored island. In the sea of blood, Lu Yi and Hua Ci stood side by side, but his treasured blood clones had already moved out. After his cultivation improved, so did his treasured blood clones. All of them were in the Sunshine Realm. Under such circumstances, how could the people of the Formless Palace resist? But the reason Lu Yi spread the sea of blood wasn't to make it easier to kill the cultivators of the Formless Palace, but to find Bai An's whereabouts. There was no aura of Bai An here, so Lu Yi suspected that he had already died. But after searching everywhere, he still couldn't find Bai An's corpse. It wasn't until the treasured blood clones asked a few cultivators that they learned that before the people of the Formless Palace came, Bai An had already called for the cultivators of the five-colored island to take refuge in the 10,000 Elephant Island. This guy didn't die. He was smart. Lu Yi heaved a sigh of relief. Now it seemed that many people on the five-colored island had responded to Bai An's call and followed him to the 10,000 Elephant Island, but there were still many people who stayed. Lu Yi didn't know why these people chose to stay. Everyone had their own ideas. If they didn't want to, Bai An couldn't force them. But now, many people who stayed had been killed. End of chapter. Chapter 1992. After a short while, the sea of blood disappeared. On the five-colored island, the surviving cultivators exchanged glances with one another, their hearts filled with lingering fear. Lu Yi was already flying toward the island of versatility. He did not go to the four-sided island, as Luan Xiao had just sent a message saying that the four-sided island was safe and sound. It was not even affected by the incident. Although the Formless Palace had sent many people, there were so many spiritual islands in the Vientiane Sea. They would definitely prioritize attacking the top-grade spiritual islands first. There were also some upper-class spiritual islands that were attacked. However, most of the upper-class spiritual islands were safe. Lu Yi asked Luan Xiao and Yen Miao to guard the four-sided island in case of any unforeseen circumstances. The two ladies were slightly weaker after all, and they were already injured previously. There was no need for them to contribute any further. When Lu Yi arrived, the island of versatility was already in deep trouble. The defensive formation had been destroyed, allowing the cultivators of the Formless Palace to invade the island of versatility and wreak havoc. The Formless Palace had long heard of the infamous island of versatility. Therefore, their first target was the island of versatility. The other top-tier spiritual islands were secondary targets. To them, the invasion would be considered a success if they could rob the island of versatility. After all, the wealth accumulated here was unimaginable. The defensive formation of the island of versatility had a long history. It could be said to be the sturdiest formation on the island of versatility. Even so, it could not withstand the attacks of the cultivators of the Formless Palace. After all, there were a few Rizhao cultivators attacking the island of versatility. The extremely rich island of versatility was the first to be robbed. The shops were not spared either. Those who resisted were killed without mercy. After Mo Wenli escaped from the battle with Ma Bin, he immediately rushed back to the island of versatility to take charge of the defense. Unfortunately, he was alone and could only watch as the defensive formation of the island of versatility was destroyed. If it were not for Mu Qing's timely help at the crucial moment, he would most likely be dead. After Mu Qing saved Mo Wenli in a hurry, the two of them made a prompt decision to escape. As a result, the entire island of versatility fell into the hands of the Formless Palace, with no chance of resistance. Meanwhile, on the island of versatility, the third palace lord of the Formless Palace, Shang Qingyue, and the fourth palace lord, Zhu Ren, stood side by side. Shang Qingyu was from the feather race. He had a pair of snow-white wings on his back. He was tall and handsome. His noble temperament and unique appearance made him look like an immortal. Zhu Ren seemed to be from the Shadow Clan. His entire body was a mass of shadow, and his true appearance could not be seen clearly. Moreover, even this mass of shadow was constantly twisting its shape. No one knew whether it was a man or a woman. Even the name Zhu Ren was not real. It was just a code name. Tian Yen, Zhu Zhuo, and Kuei Shan have all fallen, Shang Qingyu suddenly said. How could this be? Zhu Ren was a little stunned. His voice was high and low, making people uncomfortable to listen to. As he said this, he quickly took out the note to check. He found that the 3 Rikashi mentioned by Shang Qingyu were indeed uncontactable. Even the note imprint had dissipated. This undoubtedly showed that the 3 Rikashi were indeed dead. Zhu Ren was puzzled. The Wanxiang Sea is already in a state of chaos. The few sunshine protectors are either dead or injured. There is nothing they can do. Who could have killed Tian Yen and the rest? Suddenly he thought of someone. What about the Saiyan Demon King, Ma Bin? Only someone as strong as the Saiyan Demon King, Ma Bin, could kill Rikashi so quickly. The reason why they dared to invade the Wanxiang Sea so recklessly was because they sensed the chaos in the Wanxiang Sea through the portal. This gave them an opportunity to take advantage of it. If the Wanxiang Sea did not have those changes today, they would not have done this. Shang Qingyu shook his head. It's not Ma Bin. Ma Bin left after chasing after a demon. If it's not Ma Bin, who could it be? Shang Qingyu raised his head and looked into the distance. It seems that we have underestimated the strength of the Wanxiang Galaxy. Their reaction is also very fast. Zhu Ren followed his gaze and faintly sensed something. He nodded slightly. We should also speed up on our side. With their overall strength, even if the 3 Rikashi had fallen, they would not be afraid of the Wanxiang Galaxy. However, this time, the situation was a little too big. If they continued to delay, the Rikashi from the Wanxiang Galaxy would not be the only one who would come. The other galaxies that had connections with the insect path might also send Rikashi over. At that time, even if they still had 7 or 8 Rikashi, it would be difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. The main goal of this invasion of the Wanxiang Sea was to plunder resources. As long as this goal was achieved, the mission would be considered complete. Send a message to gather. Shang Qingyu spoke. It's time to leave. It was much shorter than expected. Originally, he thought that they would have at least half a day to plunder around, but now they could not wait that long. Fortunately, they had taken down the island of versatility. Zhu Ren's figure flashed and suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, a series of messages were sent out. On the various top-grade spiritual islands, the formless palace cultivators who were wreaking havoc everywhere quickly rushed towards the island of versatility. Lu Yi was flying towards the island of versatility when he suddenly sensed something. He turned his head and looked in a certain direction. The next moment he raised his eyebrows. Not bad. In that direction, he sensed the aura of several Rikashi rapidly approaching the Wanxiang Sea. And coming from that direction, they should all be Rikashi from the Wanxiang Galaxy. They obviously knew about the changes here and hurried over to help. After being in the Wanxiang Sea for so many years, Lu Yi naturally had a rough understanding of the local galaxy's resources. In the early years, the Wanxiang Galaxy claimed to have 11 Rikashi. This number was actually not small. After all, the total number of Rikashi in the 4 galaxies was not that many. However, after Ma Bin killed one of them, there were only 10 left. 5 of them guarded the Wanxiang Sea, while the other 5 stayed in their respective realms. Jiao Yen was one of them. Other than Jiao Yen, there were 4 others. What Lu Yi sensed at this moment was the aura of 4 Rikashi. This undoubtedly meant that the changes in the Wanxiang Sea today had caused the remaining Rikashi to come out in full force. Of course, Lu Yi did not know if there were more Rikashi hiding in the local galaxy. After all, this was a secret of the Wanxiang Galaxy. It was not something that an outsider like him could understand. 4 Rikashi. If he added Mo Wen Li and Mu Qing who were lucky enough to survive, that would make a total of 6 people. It was a decent force. Lu Ye's thoughts turned and he slowed down. He had originally planned to go directly to the island of versatility. However, since the Wanxiang Galaxy's local Rikashi had moved out together, he would let them meet the formless palace first. It would not be too late for him to act according to the circumstances. After he made up his mind, his expression became relaxed. He turned to look at Hua Xi beside him. Sensing his gaze, Hua Xi looked at him with her beautiful eyes. "What's wrong?" Lu Yi felt a headache coming on. "Stop fooling around." When he saw Hua Xi again this time, it was as if she had changed into a different person. She even said that she did not know him. After spending half a day together, Lu Yi could feel that she was extremely unfamiliar with him. However, Lu Yi had a feeling that this was not true. Hua Xi was just teasing him. She had always been like this. Hearing him say this, Hua Xi was silent for a moment. Then she said, "What was I like before? What was our relationship? Why didn't I reject your contact? Also, you gave me a strong sense of familiarity." Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "You used to be very obedient and docile. You listened to everything I said. You did whatever I said and did whatever I asked you to do." Hua Xi blinked and looked at him doubtfully. "Is that true?" "Absolutely." Lu Ye's expression was serious. "As for our relationship, what do you think it is?" "I don't know. We should be very close, right?" "Of course we're very close." Lu Yi nodded heavily. "I'm your only indispensable relative in this world. Even if heaven and earth are destroyed and heaven and earth are turned upside down, you and I will not be separated." Hua Xi lowered her head and fell into deep thought. Suddenly, she came to a realization. "I understand. You're my brother." Lu Yi looked at her from the corner of his eyes. The corner of his eyes twitched. He suddenly lost the intention to brainwash her. "Play however you want." He collected his thoughts and looked towards the island of versatility. There was still some distance and he could not see the situation there. However, he could sense that Nicho's aura was chaotic. There were already at least 10 Nichos gathered there. It seemed that Nicho from the Myriad Galaxy had already clashed with the people from the Formless Palace. This time, it would probably be like lightning striking the earth. Nicho from the Myriad Galaxy had been in charge of the Myriad Galaxy for so many years. He had never suffered such a big loss. Naturally, he could not tolerate the invasion of the Formless Palace. Therefore, no matter what, they had to do something. Otherwise, where would their dignity be in the future? As for the Formless Palace, since they had already invaded, they would not be afraid of the Myriad Galaxy. Lu Yi could only wonder. The people from the Formless Palace had come through the portal. How were they going to retreat? They could not possibly use the insect path. If they did, there would definitely be a large number of Nichos chasing after them. He restrained his aura and activated the spirit inscriptions to conceal his and Hua Xi's existence. He quietly approached the Myriad Galaxy. Before he even reached the place, a conflict had already broken out. It was extremely intense. However, the conflict did not last for too long. It soon calmed down. No one knew what was going on. After a while, Lu Yi finally arrived at a reef island near the island of versatility. There were many scattered cultivators gathered here. Many of them looked miserable. Lu Yi found a place to land with Hua Xi. He looked around and saw Tao Wu's figure. Tao Wu was undoubtedly injured. There were many cultivators gathered around him. Most of them were from the Stone Clan. They should be the people he brought from the Rainbow Island. Lu Yi hurried forward. After meeting Tao Wu, he learned about his encounter. He had previously called for the cultivators from the Rainbow Island to follow him to the island of versatility. However, before he arrived, he heard that the island of versatility was under attack. The protective formation was on the verge of collapse. Now, he did not need to go to the island of versatility. It was not peaceful there. Since he could not go to the island of versatility, Tao Wu did not know where to go. Along the way, he encountered a group of cultivators from the Formless Palace and fought. Fortunately, there were not many casualties. End of chapter. Chapter 1993. Just as Tao Wu led his men to fight the cultivators of Formless Palace, their opponents seemed to have received some kind of order and abandoned them, converging towards the island of versatility. Immediately after, the 6 Rikhas of the Wanxiang Galaxy arrived and fought with the Rikhas of Formless Palace for a while. Formless Palace should be retreating. Tao Wu pointed in the direction of the island of versatility as he spoke. I wonder what they're setting up now. Lu Yi looked in the direction of his finger and indeed saw a large number of Formless Palace cultivators gathered in a certain area of the island of versatility. Among them, there were even 2 Rikhas who were busy. At that location, an altar-like structure was rapidly being built. The altar was in the middle, forming the shape of a door. Lu Yi was still wondering how the Formless Palace people were going to retreat. Now that he saw this scene, he immediately understood. That's right, since Formless Palace had the means to use Yaya's aura to open a super long-distance teleportation portal for the source point, then they naturally had the ability to set up a teleportation portal. However, such a bizarre method was a little unimaginable. Lu Yi guessed that the other party had most likely used some kind of special treasure, or else it would not make sense for them to do such a thing. On the island of versatility, a large number of Formless Palace cultivators were busy, with 2 Rikhas guarding them. Outside the island of versatility, there were 6 figures on both sides of the Formless Palace and the local galaxy facing each other. Lu Yi saw Mu Qing and Mo Wenli in the local galaxy's camp. As for the remaining 4, he did not recognize them. After all, he had never seen them before. The white-haired old man in the lead is called Yuan Sei, from the Yuan realm. Tao Wu's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Yuan Sei? Lu Yi was curious. What's this guy's relationship with Yuan Du? The two must be related. After all, they had the same surname and were both from the Yuan realm. Tao Wu's background was much better than Lu Ye's. The 5-color domain was also one of the top domains, so he seemed to know more about the Wanxiang Galaxy than Lu Yi. His sudden mention of this to Lu Yi was obviously a subtle reminder. After all, everyone on the island of versatility knew about the conflict between Lu Yi and Yuan Du. It said that Yuan Sei is Yuan Du's uncle and also his master. Yuan Du could be said to have been taught by Yuan Sei. Lu Yi nodded slightly and remembered this matter in his heart. Yuan Du had died at his hands. Although no one had seen the sea of blood at the time, this matter could not be hidden no matter what. Moreover, Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba were also involved. Since Yuan Sei and Yuan Du had a close relationship, Lu Yi naturally had to take note of them. Who are the others? Lu Yi asked. As for the other 3, that delicate-looking woman should be Le Qingqing from the High Heavens continent, just like Chen Xuanba. The one holding Mu Qing's hand should be her cultivation partner, Zhou Yi. He's not from the Vientiane Galaxy, but because of his relationship with Mu Qing, he settled down in the Kunyu realm many years ago. As for the last one, he should be Yan Gai from the Tianyan realm. There were 6 realms in the island of Versatility Galaxy. They were the Yuan realm, Tianyan realm, Kunyu realm, Illusion God realm, High Sky continent, and Che Ling realm. It was not that these were the only 6 realms in the galaxy. Instead, Rizhao was born in all 6 realms. Previously, except for Jiu Yan's Che Ling realm, almost every realm had 2 Rizhao. But now Jiu Yan was not here. Only 6 Rizhao were gathered here. The 6 of them were imposing, but the other 6 were not weak either. In fact, they were even stronger. Also, the Formless Palace had 2 extra Rizhao on the island of versatility. This situation made Yuan Sei and the others very uncomfortable. The island of versatility sea had not changed in tens of thousands of years. They rushed here when they heard the news. Naturally, they could see that the Formless Palace was planning to evacuate. The entire island of versatility was a mess. Apart from the island of versatility, several top-grade spiritual islands and even dozens of high-grade spiritual islands had been ransacked. Countless cultivators had been killed by the Formless Palace. Now that the Formless Palace wanted to evacuate, the island of versatility could not just stand by and watch. If the Formless Palace really evacuated safely, the island of versatility sea would no longer be under their control. If they could not even protect the lives and wealth of foreign cultivators, what right did they have to control the island of versatility sea? However, the Formless Palace was powerful. Although the 6 Rizhao were not few in number, they might not be a match for the formless palace. Moreover, at this very moment, countless cultivators were looking at the island of Versatility Sea. If they did not handle this well, the galaxy's reputation would be ruined. On the island of Versatility, the formless palace's altar was getting more and more complete. They might be able to use it soon. Yuan Sei knew that he could not delay any longer. He sighed softly and took a step forward. "Shang Qingyu, do you dare to have a bet with me?" Shang Qingyu had a faint smile on his face. He replied calmly, "How do you want to bet? What are we betting on?" If the 6 Rizhao came to stop them regardless of the consequences, it would be troublesome for them to evacuate. However, from Yuan Sei's words, he seemed to have a plan. Shang Qingyu could vaguely see through his intentions. It was exactly what he was thinking. One side wanted to leave, while the other wanted to stay. However, neither side was willing to engage in an all-out battle. Since that was the case, the two leaders would fight it out to see who was stronger and who was weaker before coming to a conclusion. Yuan Sei said, "We'll bet on the lives of the cultivators under the formless palace's Rizhao. If you win, just take them and leave. I won't stop you. If you lose, what will happen?" Shang Qingyu raised his eyebrows. Yuan Sei's eyes flashed. "Today, the island of Versatility will be bathed in blood." His request did not include the Rizhao of the formless palace. Even if he really won, he would not let the Rizhao of the formless palace be obedient. However, it was different under the Rizhao. If he could defeat Shang Qingyu, the Rizhao of the formless palace would be wary of him. By then, he could leave a large number of formless palace cultivators behind to account for the suffering of the spiritual islands. "Sure." Shang Qingyu looked nonchalant. His expression was relaxed as if he did not care about Yuan Sei at all. "Then I'll make a bet with you." When he finished speaking, he had already charged towards Yuan Sei. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Behind Yuan Sei, the 5 Vientiane Rizhao were shocked. On the other hand, Yuan Sei seemed to have expected this and did not panic at all. As a member of the feather race, Shang Qingyu was extremely fast. Before he even reached Yuan Sei, the wings on his back flapped. Streaks of white light covered Yuan Sei like lightning. Yuan Sei did not move. He reached out his hand and something appeared in his hand. In the distance, Lu Yi observed with rapt attention. At this time, his eyes couldn't help but light up as he warned Yuan Sei's hand without blinking. At this moment, a treasure that looked like a gourd appeared in Yuan Sei's hand. It had an antique look and was filled with complicated patterns. It looked extraordinary. A treasure gourd. Lu Yi immediately recognized the nature of this item. This was the Vine of Fortune's attribute treasure. It came from the same source as his sword gourd and elixir gourd. As far as he knew, there was a wind gourd in a certain realm. It was the treasure of that realm. However, he had never seen it before. He did not expect to see a treasure gourd in Yuan Sei's hand on the Vientiane Sea. What was the special property of this gourd? What was its power? He could not help but think of something. When he was in the Azura field, he had placed his sword gourd on a high platform. Then, he received some information from the Azura field. According to the information, there were a total of 7 attribute treasures on the Vine of Fortune. If he could gather all 7 gourds, he would be able to discover the secret of creation. He did not know what the secret of creation was, but it was definitely extraordinary. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Yuan Sei suddenly shouted, "Burn!" The gourd suddenly emitted a bright red light. It seemed to have become extremely hot. Even the area where Yuan Sei was distorted by the high temperature. In the next instant, a streak of fire flew out of the gourd. The fire was not fierce or big. It was like a small fire snake. However, when this small fire snake appeared, Lu Yi suddenly felt an abnormal reaction from his talent tree. He was slightly startled. He quickly sensed it and felt a desire from his talent tree. This made his expression a little strange. Speaking of which, when he was very weak, his talent tree did react to some fire attribute treasures. However, as his strength increased, his talent tree kept changing. This situation never happened again. Until today, Lu Yi immediately understood that the fire snake released by Yuan Sei's treasure gourd was very useful to his talent tree. There was no reaction in the past because the fire attribute treasures he devoured were not of high quality. However, the fire snake that flew out of the treasure gourd was obviously different. This made Lu Ye's mind active. Now, it seemed that Yuan Sei dared to propose a duel with Shang Qingyu because of this fire gourd. Moreover, it was a killing move. Yuan Sei did not have any intention of probing at all. This showed Yuan Sei's eagerness and his trust in this treasure. The small fire snake slithered. Its speed was not fast, but the white light that Shang Qingyu shot out earlier seemed to have melted instantly. The figure that was charging towards Yuan Sei suddenly changed direction as he exclaimed, "It's a treasure!" Shang Qingyu obviously noticed that the small fire snake was not ordinary. He did not dare to face it head-on. Instead, he moved his body and kept dodging. However, no matter how he dodged, he could not get rid of the small fire snake's pursuit. There were even a few times when the situation was extremely dangerous. Yuan Sei held the fire gourd in one hand and made a hand seal with the other. He stared at Shang Qingyu's figure and his divine sense surged wildly. The wind gourd could become a world-suppressing treasure. Naturally, the fire gourd in his hand was not inferior. This was also the most powerful treasure in the entire Wanxiang galaxy. When he learned that Formless Palace was coming, he brought this treasure with him without any hesitation. He then invited Shang Qingyu to a duel. He wanted to use this treasure to kill Shang Qingyu first. End of chapter. Chapter 1994. In today's situation, many spirit islands had suffered because of the Formless Palace's invasion, and many cultivators had died tragically. All of this was blamed on the Wanxiang galaxy. As such, no matter how many enemies died under the sun, it would not appease the public's anger. Only by killing the enemies under the sun could the Wanxiang galaxy's reputation be restored. That was why Yuan Sei used the fire gourd directly. He wanted to end the battle quickly. Within this short period of time, Shang Qingyu could no longer avoid the fire snake's pursuit. He kept activating the power of his Dharma treasures, but no matter what the quality of the Dharma treasures were, they would quickly melt and shatter when touched by the small fire snake. The cultivators who were watching the battle from all directions finally understood the horror of this Dharma treasure. Some of them even shouted with righteous indignation, cheering for Yuan Sei. The scene was unusually lively. Not only was the small fire snake terrifying, but it also seemed to leave behind dark marks wherever it passed. It was as if the space was burned, and there was an extremely dangerous aura coming from those marks. It was obvious that Shang Qingyu was aware of this, so he tried his best to avoid coming into contact with the marks. However, this was exactly what Yuan Sei wanted. He controlled the little fire snake to constantly block Shang Qingyu's movements, causing the space he had to move to become smaller and smaller. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before Shang Qingyu would no longer have any space to move. When that time came, as long as he was touched by the little fire snake, he would either die or be injured. Something's wrong. Behind Yuan Sei, Mu Qing's cultivation partner, Zhou Yi, suddenly said. Mu Qing was originally looking at the situation on the battlefield with excitement. When she heard her cultivation partner's words, she was stunned. What's wrong? Look at them. Do they look worried at all? As Zhou Yi spoke, he gestured in the direction of the other Rizhao from the Formless Palace. Mu Qing quickly turned her head and saw that the other Rizhao looked as if they were watching a good show. They were not worried about Shang Qingyu's situation at all. In this situation, either they did not care about Shang Qingyu's life or the fire gourd is indeed powerful. This special fire that has been nurtured for many years is indeed not something that can be blocked by ordinary means. I'm not as good as it. Shang Qingyu's voice suddenly sounded. Yuan Sei's brows furrowed as he vaguely realized that something was amiss. However, he couldn't afford to be distracted at this moment. His spiritual sense surged again, and the small fire snake instantly straightened its body before shooting toward Shang Qingyu, who had nowhere to run. But even at the critical moment of life and death, Shang Qingyu was not afraid at all. He reached out and grabbed at the air, and a long sword appeared in his hand. Lu Yi could clearly see that it wasn't a sword at all, it was just a sword light. However, the moment this sword light appeared, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine, as if a great danger was about to befall him. Furthermore, the feeling that this sword light gave him was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Merak sword energy. Yuan Sei exclaimed in surprise. Good eye. Shangqing Yu laughed loudly. Since I knew that there was a treasure in your myriad phenomenon galaxy, how could I have come here without any preparations? If you want to kill me, then you'll be buried with me. As he said that, his expression turned fierce, and the sword chi in his hand suddenly shot toward Yuan Sei. In an instant, the sword chi split into two into four into 8. A rain of swords enveloped Yuan Sei and the others. The expressions of the 6 sons of the Wanxiang galaxy changed drastically as they channeled their dermic powers. Even so, the 6 of them did not feel safe at all. This was because the Merak sword was a treasure, and the sword chi it produced could be considered the power of a treasure as well. It was not inferior to the special fire that the fire gourd had nurtured for many years. With this sudden change in the situation, it was clearly a situation where both sides suffered great losses. Shangqing Yu would definitely die if he couldn't withstand the special fire, but the 6 sons of the myriad phenomenon C would probably be killed on the spot by the sword chi of the Merak sword. In the end, Yuan Sei did not dare to perish together with his enemy. Shangqing Yu went crazy, but he couldn't go crazy with him. 6 for 1, no matter how he thought about it, was not a good deal. Therefore, he did not hesitate at all and instantly recalled the special fire. The small fire snake suddenly spread out and enveloped the 6 of them. The endless rain of swords came crashing down. The fire shattered and returned to the fire gourd in Yuan Du's hand. The 6 figures were revealed, and all of them looked frightened, especially Yuan Sei. His face was extremely pale, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He was clearly injured. Oh! Shangqing Yu raised his eyebrows and smirked. He looked at Yuan Sei with disdain. So I'm still alive. Thank you for showing mercy. Yuan Sei's lips parted, but he could not say a word. He had experienced Shangqing Yu's madness. Looks like I won? Shangqing Yu spoke again. Yuan Sei did not say a word, but he had to admit that Shangqing Yu had won the bet just now. As the special fire was destroyed and its spirituality was damaged, he could not use it again in a short period of time. Without the fire gourd, they could not stop the enemy unless they were determined to fight with their lives on the line. Why aren't you thanking the friends of the myriad phenomenon galaxy for their hospitality? We're about to leave, but they still came to see us off. How courteous! Shangqing Yu turned to instruct the cultivators of the formless palace. On the island of versatility, there was a burst of laughter and laughter. Some people even shouted that the myriad phenomenon galaxy was hospitable and that they would come again next time. Yuan Sei was already mentally unstable. After being provoked, he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. The others also had ugly expressions. However, there was nothing they could do in the current situation. Yuan Sei had been defeated, and the number of sunshine on their side was less than the enemy's. If another conflict broke out, the myriad phenomenon galaxy would be at a disadvantage. If only Jiu Yen was here. Mu Qing clenched her fists. Her face was full of humiliation. If Jiu Yen was here, with her strength and the power of the treasure in her hand, Shangqing Yu would not be able to be so arrogant. Unfortunately, Jiu Yen had left the Wanxiang galaxy not too long ago for another place. She did not care much about this at first, but after Yuan Du joined forces with the Black Cloud Alliance to attack the Three-World Island, she realized that Jiu Yan's departure was not a coincidence. Yuan Du had lured her away. Mu Qing's eyes reddened as she was filled with helplessness and grievances that she had nowhere to vent. A Yu Yao flew out from the island of versatility and reported to Shangqing Yu. Third Palace Master, the array has been set up. It can be opened at any time. Please ask for instructions. Shangqing Yu grinned. Then let's go home. Then he turned to look at Yuan Sei and the others. My friends, you don't have to send me off. On the island of versatility, countless cultivators from the formless palace roared with laughter. The array began to hum and the door was about to open. Yuan Sei and the others could only watch helplessly. However, at this moment, Shangqing Yu suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. A figure slowly walked over from that direction. He wasn't very old and looked to be in his 20s. There was a long saber hanging from his waist. What was even more noteworthy was that he was holding a golden toad in his arms. Shang Qingyu scanned with his divine telekinesis and found that this person should be a weapon cultivator who had just become a sunshine cultivator not long ago. As his aura had not completely stabilized, Shang Qingyu immediately looked away and did not care much. However, who would have thought that this new sunshine cultivator, whom he did not care about at all, would say arrogantly, "You can go, but leave your things behind." Shang Qingyu was stunned for a moment. He looked at the newcomer again with a puzzled expression. Then he looked at Yuan Sei. "My friend, you should take care of your juniors. It would be bad if they cause any misunderstandings." He obviously thought that this new sunshine cultivator was from the Wanxiang galaxy. Since ancient times, there were many people who were fearless. However, most of them did not live for long. Now that the battle of the Wanxiang Sea had been settled, he did not want to cause any more trouble. He just wanted to retreat safely. Yuan Sei glanced at Lu Yi and frowned. He did not expect that there would be another sunshine cultivator on the Wanxiang Sea. He shook his head slowly. "This is not a sunshine cultivator from our galaxy." "Oh." Shang Qingyu raised his eyebrows. "Since he's not one of you, it shouldn't be a problem to kill him, right?" Yuan Sei did not speak. He did not notice Mu Qing's excited expression behind him. She did not expect Lu Yi of the Three-World Island to jump out at such a critical moment. A new sunshine cultivator was indeed not worthy of her attention. However, the pet beast in his arms was not ordinary. Mu Qing had seen with her own eyes how Lu Yi killed 2 sunshine cultivators from the Formless Palace. Those 2 sunshine cultivators were quite strong, but when they were hit by that strange golden light, they were instantly imprisoned and turned into fish on the chopping board. If it was him, Mu Qing suddenly looked forward to it. Given the current situation, the situation of their galaxy could not get any worse. Any change would not be a bad thing for their galaxy. "What's wrong?" Zhou Yi held her hand and could feel the change in her mood. He could not help but ask. "There's a good show to watch," Mu Qing whispered. Zhou Yi was puzzled. Everyone here, except for her, did not know about the strange ability of the pet beast in Lu Ye's arms. Even Imo Wenli did not know about it. Previously, when he joined forces with He Yun to attack Ma Bin, he was so focused on Ma Bin that he did not notice anything else. "Kill him," Shang Qingyu ordered calmly. He did not need to personally deal with a new sunshine cultivator. Moreover, he controlled the Merak sword Qi with his flesh and blood. Although he did not seem to be injured, he actually consumed a lot of energy. At this moment, even his soul was in severe pain. A petite girl suddenly walked out of the formation and went straight to Lu Yi. She should be the girl called Ying. Her aura was much more stable and strong than Lu Ye's. Conservatively speaking, she was at least in the middle stage of the Sunshine Realm. In terms of strength, she gave Lu Yi the feeling that she was about the same as Yuan Du. No one cared about this battle. Everyone in the Sunshine Realm felt that Ying had no chance of losing. That's what she thought too. Her small figure brandished a huge spear and attacked Lu Yi without saying a word. Lu Yi acted as if he did not see it. He also did not show any signs of channeling his magical power or defending himself. However, when Ying was not far away from him, a golden light suddenly flashed in his arms. "Today, I have something to do." End of chapter. Chapter 1995. Here it comes. Mu Qing stared at the beast pet in Lu Ye's arms. She wanted to see what the golden light was, but even so, she couldn't see it clearly. The golden light flashed in her vision. Ying, who was charging at Lu Yi aggressively, was covered in golden light and became stiff. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lu Yi reached out and grabbed Rizhao, who was called Ying, in his hand. He unsheathed his Panshan saber and placed it on Ying's slender neck. Ying's face was filled with confusion. Everything happened too suddenly. Not to mention the bystanders, even she, who was the one who experienced it, did not notice it. However, at this moment, her body was covered by the golden light. She could not activate her magic power, qi, and blood. The cold blade was close to her body. She did not dare to act rashly. She could clearly feel the sharpness of the saber. Even with her mid-stage sunshine physique, she could feel the stinging pain. In other words, this saber should be able to cut her body open easily. She turned her eyes toward Shang Qingyu. Her eyes were full of pleading, trying to convey a message of help. Spiritual treasure? Shang Qingyu frowned. He finally looked at Lu Yi seriously and didn't dare to underestimate him anymore. His perception was not wrong. This young man who had appeared out of nowhere was indeed the newly promoted Rizhao. Ying's strength was definitely stronger than him. However, after that strange golden light, Ying was actually captured by him. This was obviously not his ability, but that golden light, normal magic treasures couldn't have such mysterious and powerful power. Only a spiritual treasure could. Therefore, he was sure that this young man had a spiritual treasure. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to defeat someone stronger than him so easily. He carefully looked at Ying's condition. Her vitality was intact, her breathing was stable, and her body was covered in golden light. He immediately understood that the spiritual treasure should have a sealing effect. What kind of spiritual treasure was this? Shang Qingyu's mind raced. He couldn't remember which spiritual treasure had such power. The reason why the Formless Palace dared to invade the Wanxiang Sea so openly was because they knew the ins and outs of the Wanxiang Sea very well. Before the invasion, Shang Qingyu even used the Merak Sword Qi to guard against the Wanxiang Galaxy's fire gourd. Reality proved that his cautiousness was not wrong. His bet with Yuan Sei was more of a competition between the two treasures. He had won by a hair's breadth with his insanity. Who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would occur just as they were about to return home? Shang Qingyu narrowed his eyes and looked at Lu Yi. Young man, do you know what you are doing? It had always been the Formless Palace robbing other forces. Today, someone actually wanted to rob them. Moreover, Yuan Sei had said that this young man was not Nikitaresu from Wanxiang Galaxy. In other words, he must have come from an unknown galaxy. Therefore, even if he was killed, Wanxiang Galaxy would not retaliate. The power of this sealing attribute treasure was indeed mysterious and hard to defend against, but it wasn't invincible. He really wasn't afraid of anything. I have a question to ask. Lu Yi placed the Panshan saber on Ying's neck and looked at Shang Qingyu. Shang Qingyu was silent for a moment before he said, "Speak." If it was any other day, he would not have bothered with such an arrogant young man. But now that Ying's life was in his hands, he could not refuse. No matter what, he had to save Ying first. What did your holy maiden do? Why do you want to kill her? From the various information obtained before, Yaya was the saint of the Formless Palace. She clearly had the opportunity to restore herself, but she had not done so. Obviously, she knew what would happen if she restored herself. Today, Lu Yi was in danger. Yaya was forced to break the jade bracelet and recover the cultivation and memories sealed in the bracelet. After beating Yuan Du into the Wanxiang Sea, she quickly fled. Lu Yi could not ignore this. Since the people of the Formless Palace were in front of him, he naturally had to ask clearly. Shang Qingyu's eyes flashed. You know the saint? As soon as his voice fell, Ying groaned. Blood flowed from her neck, and the blade penetrated her flesh by an inch. Lu Yi looked at Shang Qingyu indifferently. I am the one asking the questions. You only need to answer. You brat. Nikitaresu, who was standing behind Shang Qingyu, was furious when he saw Ying injured. However, he did not dare to act rashly. He was really aggrieved. But Lu Ye's action undoubtedly made the Nikitaresu of the Formless Palace aware of his cruelty. It was foreseeable that if Shang Qingyu dared to talk nonsense again, Ying would suffer. Shang Qingyu's eyes showed a trace of appreciation. Such a cruel and merciless young man was rare nowadays. He was quite to his liking. If it were any other day, he would have wanted to subdue him, but now was obviously not the time. He pondered for a moment and said, the saint made some mistakes, so she was hunted down. Seeing that Lu Yi seemed to want to inquire more carefully, he said again, you don't have to ask more about what mistakes she made. This is the secret of the Formless Palace. No comment. Lu Yi blinked and realized that this secret was impossible for Shang Qingyu to say in any case, so he changed the question. You are hunting her down. What is your final attitude? Attitude? Shang Qingyu smiled slightly. If she knows her mistake, then it's naturally easy to talk about it. She will obediently be the saint, but if she doesn't know her mistake, he stopped talking, but his meaning was already obvious. Lu Ye's eyes lowered slightly. What kind of force was the formless palace? Lu Yi didn't know before and had never heard of it at all, but this time he learned. Along the way, there were many corpses in the usually prosperous Wanxiang Sea. Almost all the top spiritual islands were ransacked. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the bandits of the cultivation world. Yaya was from the formless palace, but now she was being hunted down. It should not be just because she made some mistakes, but it was very likely that there was a difference in ideology. And after all these years of getting along, Lu Yi naturally knew what Yaya's temperament was like. If she was really willing to return to the formless palace, she would not have maintained the form of a child all these years. She could have recovered her strength long ago. So the conflict between Yaya and the formless palace was irreconcilable. Thinking this way, Lu Yi knew what attitude he should use to treat the formless palace. Kid, I have answered your question. Can you let her go now? Shang Qingyu looked at Lu Yi across the air, and there was some impatience in his expression. Lu Yi said loudly, if you want me to let her go, I can. I still say the same thing. You can go, but leave the things behind. Shang Qingyu's eyes were unhurried. You have just advanced to the Rizhao level, so you may not know the dangers of the cultivation world. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have a treasure. There are many existences in this world that you can't afford to offend. If you let her go now, I can let bygones be bygones, but if you persist, the light of the blade flashed and blood flowed. A severed arm flew out and fell into the Wanxiang Sea, disappearing under the deep sea. Shang Qingyu frowned, and the many Rizhao beside him were full of anger. The countless cultivators who were watching from afar were even more shocked. No one expected Lu Yi to suddenly make a move. Although he did not take Ying's life, he directly cut off one of her arms. The pain made Ying's face contort, but more than that, she was terrified. At such a close distance, she could more clearly and intuitively feel the hidden violence under Lu Ye's calm appearance than Shang Qingyu. What did you say? Lu Yi looked at Shang Qingyu with some confusion. The Wanxiang Sea is windy and strong. I didn't hear you clearly. Say it again. Shang Qingyu's face twitched, and he gritted his teeth. I'll kill you. As soon as he finished speaking, several figures rushed out from behind Shang Qingyu. Zhu Ren, the fourth palace master, was the fastest. He was from the Shadow Clan and did not have much of a presence. However, at this moment, he took the lead, and his whole body turned into an almost imperceptible ball of dim light. When these Rizhao made a move together, Mu Qing's expression changed. She quickly looked at Yuan Sei. Senior Yuan, this was an opportunity. Her personal experience made her understand the mysterious power of the golden light better than anyone else. The reason why Shang Qingyu dared to offend Lu Yi and gave the order to kill him was that he was sure that the golden light was the power of a treasure. Since that was the case, it could not be used frequently. This was the disadvantage of most treasures. Basically, they were trump cards that could only be used once in a short period of time. For example, the Merak sword Qi that Shang Qingyu used before, and the fire gourd fire that Yuan Sei used, but that golden light was different. The 6 Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea were no match for it, but if Lu Yi was included, they might be able to fight it. This was the best chance for the galaxy to save face. Don't act rashly. However, to Mu Qing's disappointment, Yuan Sei had no intention of taking the opportunity to make a move. Obviously, he had lost his courage after losing the battle just now. Mu Qing's face was full of bitterness. She could not help but think of Jiu Yan. If Jiu Yan was here, with her temper, how could she tolerate Rizhao being so unscrupulous in the Wanxiang Sea? She would have fought with Shang Qingyu long ago. The 6 Rizhao of the Wanxiang Sea watched coldly from the sidelines. Lu Ye's side instantly became a whirlpool of conflict. A series of powerful divine wills rushed over from different directions, easily breaking through his divine soul defense. These Rizhao of the Formless Palace were all veterans. Naturally, they knew the most effective way to deal with a new Rizhao like Lu Yi. It was an attack on the divine soul. As a new Rizhao, his realm was not stable yet. Of course, his divine soul power was far inferior to theirs. Therefore, as long as his divine soul was suppressed, Lu Yi would not be able to resist. In this way, not only could they save Ying, but they could also obtain a powerful treasure. However, to everyone's disbelief, Lu Yi, the new Rizhao, was not directly suppressed as expected under the attack of so many divine souls. Instead, his expression suddenly became ferocious, a reaction caused by the pain in his deity ocean. He swung the long sword in his hand. Ying's head flew up, her face full of confusion and helplessness. The headless corpse fell toward the Wanxiang Sea. Ying! Someone shouted. It was the burly man from before. He seemed to have a good relationship with Ying. Seeing Ying killed, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Lu Ye's eyes were bloodshot. He turned his head and looked to the side. The Pixiopet beast on his shoulder was shining with golden light. In that direction, Zhu Ren was rapidly approaching Lu Yi. The moment their eyes met, Zhu Ren's heart skipped a beat and he hurriedly retreated. End of chapter. Chapter 1996. The golden light flashed again, and Shang Qingyu's expression became extremely shocked. How can this be? Just as Mu Qing thought before, the reason why he wasn't afraid even after witnessing Lu Ye's means was that he was sure that the power of the treasure couldn't be activated a second time in a short time. This new Rizhao, who came out of nowhere, thought that he could do whatever he wanted after capturing Ying. He was obviously naive, so he didn't hesitate to give the order to kill him. Who knew that another golden light would flash in front of him? Everyone saw what happened to Ying with their own eyes, so when the golden light erupted, almost everyone retreated. No one wanted to face the power of a treasure directly. When the chaos subsided, the Rizhao of the Formless Palace all had ugly expressions, because Lu Yi had captured another Rizhao. It was the majestic man who called Ying's name just now. This man's body was covered in golden light, just like Ying's blood, qi, and spiritual power were sealed, and he couldn't move. Not far away, Zhu Ren's face was filled with lingering fear. He was sure that Lu Yi wanted to attack him at first because he was at the front. Fortunately, his reaction wasn't slow, and he retreated faster than everyone else when he realized that something was wrong. This made the other party give up his original plan and attack someone else instead. Once that strange golden light was activated, Zhu Ren admitted that he wasn't sure if he could dodge it. If he was really captured by a new Rizhao, then his reputation as the fourth palace master would be completely ruined. You want to? Lu Yi put the Panshan blade on the neck of the majestic man, using him as a shield. He looked over the man's shoulder at Shang Qingyu, his expression slightly twisted. Kill who? Until now, the turbulence in the divine sense sea was slowly calmed down under the light of the seven-colored god lotus. The corner of Shang Qingyu's eyes twitched violently. He was a little confused. Logically speaking, a treasure that could imprison Rizhao so easily must be a treasure. Only a treasure in this world had such strange power, but if it was really a treasure, it didn't make sense that it could be used a second time so quickly. And if the other party could use it a second time, could he use it a third time, a fourth time? There were indeed a lot of Rizhao, 11 of them came this time, but only 7 were still alive, and 1 was captured. His life was in danger at any time. There were only 6 who could still fight, the same number of Rizhao as the Wanxiang Galaxy. The original advantage they had was gone. Previously, 3 Rikagas had died mysteriously. Suddenly, Shang Qingyu's heart skipped a beat. Tianyan, did you kill Zhu Zhua and Kuei Shan? Initially, he thought that the deaths of these 3 were the handiwork of the Wanxiang Galaxy's Nicho. However, after exchanging blows with Yuan Sei, he realized that the Wanxiang Galaxy's Nicho wasn't that murderous. He also didn't have the means to kill Nicho silently. But if it was this young man with a treasure in his hand, Lu Ye's expression was still ferocious, but now it wasn't because of the divine sea's turbulence, but because he was suppressing the desire in his heart. Previously, when he captured Ying, there was a voice that kept ringing in his heart, giving him an urge to activate the power of the talent tree to devour Ing and enjoy that ecstasy once again. But he knew he couldn't do that, because if he really did that, it would be too shocking. Moreover, once this hole was opened again, it might be impossible to suppress it forever. Previously, in order to advance to sunshine, he had no choice but to do so in order to complete his spiritual source as soon as possible. Now that he was sunshine, he could no longer continue. The black fruit on the talent tree was an ominous sign. Lu Yi didn't want it to truly mature. I'll say it one last time. Lu Yi gritted his teeth. He didn't know why, but he could feel a fragrance coming from the captured nicho in front of him. That fragrance constantly activated the power of the talent tree, making it difficult for him to suppress the desire in his heart. He steeled his heart and swung his long sword again. The muscular man immediately followed in Ying's footsteps. His tough body was cut in half and fell towards the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi raised his long sword and pointed it at Shang Qingyu. His face was full of hostility. You can go, but leave the thing behind. The expressions of the faceless palace's nicho changed again and again. Lu Yi killing Ing just now was beyond their expectations. After all, at that time, everyone thought that Lu Yi would take Ing as a hostage and wouldn't act rashly. But Ing still died. Now that Lu Yi killed again, he was completely unscrupulous. It was as if he didn't care whether he had a hostage or not. And when they thought of the strange golden light that was activated twice, they couldn't help but think of many things. Shang Qingyu thought the most. At this moment, he could already confirm that the deaths of Tian Yen, Lu Zhua, and the other two nicho were inextricably linked to Lu Yi. In other words, in just half a day, 5 nicho from the Faceless Palace had died in Lu Ye's hands. He definitely couldn't have done it with his strength, so what he relied on was the power of the treasure. Even if it was activated once to kill one person, the treasure had been activated 5 times. Which treasure did this F*King treasure belong to? As the third palace master of the Faceless Palace, Shang Qingyu had studied many treasures in the starry sky. But even with his vast knowledge, he couldn't make any inferences at the moment. But in any case, Lu Ye's unscrupulous behavior made him very cautious. He told himself that there was no such thing as a treasure that could be activated without limit in this world. The other party couldn't possibly use that kind of golden light again. But he didn't dare to gamble. Just as many thoughts flashed through his mind, in the Wanxiang Galaxy's camp, Yuan Sei suddenly took a step forward and said coldly, "What fellow cultivator Lu means is also what I, Wanxiang Galaxy, mean." Mu Qing stood behind him and sighed slightly. Just now, when several nicho from the Faceless Palace attacked together, she felt that it was an opportunity, so she transmitted her voice to Yuan Sei. In the end, Yuan Sei was unmoved. But now, after Lu Yi withstood the Faceless Palace's attack and even killed one of them, Yuan Sei stood up. Because on the surface, after 2 people from the Faceless Palace were killed, there were still 6 nicho left, the same number as the Wanxiang Galaxy. Now that they took the initiative to draw closer to Lu Yi, they had one more person than the other party. Moreover, Lu Yi had that strange golden light treasure. This was the Wanxiang Galaxy's last chance to save face. Of course, Yuan Sei wouldn't miss it, so he stood up. Shang Qingyu suddenly turned his head and looked at Yuan Sei coldly. There was anger and disdain in his eyes. He saw through Yuan Sei's thoughts at a glance. In his heart, he was extremely critical of Yuan Sei's judgment of the situation. But it was undeniable that once the Wanxiang Galaxy and Lu Yi joined forces, the Faceless Palace would not be able to gain any advantage. The losses this time were too great. As many as 5 nicho had died. Although the Faceless Palace was big and had a lot of nicho, they shouldn't waste it like this. If he handed over the plundered goods, he might not even be able to keep his position as the third palace master when he returned. He glanced at Yuan Sei coldly, then turned to Lu Yi. "Can you still activate that golden light?" Lu Ye's nose was in the air, his face unruly. "You can try." Shang Qingyu's eyes flashed. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, suddenly, an aura came from afar. For a moment, all the nicho's attention was attracted. Lu Ye's expression changed as he turned to look. A moment later, a familiar figure appeared in his field of vision. The person who came was extraordinarily handsome. His aura was not too ostentatious, but when the Nicho from the Wanxiang Sea saw this person, their expressions changed. This was because the person who came was the Azure Demon King, Ma Bin. Why is it so lively? Ma Bin was a little confused. He had been chasing after He Yun, so he had no idea what happened after that. Now that he had returned, he was surprised to find that a lot of Nicho had gathered here. If he hadn't sensed Lu Ye's aura here, he wouldn't have shown himself so openly. He had obviously gone through a tough battle. His clothes were tattered, but even if his aura was unstable, he seemed to be the center of attention. Everyone's attention was on his right hand. At this moment, he was holding a head in his right hand. The head's eyes were wide open, as if he had died with a grievance. He Yun. In the Wanxiang Sea camp, Mo Wen Li's eyes narrowed. At the beginning, he had joined forces with He Yun to attack Ma Bin. He had personally experienced He Yun's strength, but he didn't expect him to be dead now. Ma Bin even brought his head back. This was one of Zi Xian's 5 venerable monsters. He was an expert who stood at the peak of the Nicho. How could he die just like that? Ma Bin looked left and right, then looked at Lu Yi in surprise. Obviously, he didn't expect Lu Yi to have broken through to the Nicho realm. When he chased after He Yun, Lu Yi was only Yu Yao. It had only been half a day. His surprise only lasted for a moment. It wasn't surprising for the successor of the Dao tree to advance quickly. He casually tossed He Yun's head to Lu Yi and nodded slightly. Lu Yi took the head, glanced at it indifferently, and crushed it to pieces. He Yun was dead. Yuan Du was also dead. Some things had come to an end. As for what happened next, they could only talk about it later. Right now, they had to solve the problem at hand. Formless Palace? Ma Bin looked at Shang Qingyu and the others and frowned. Green Demon King Ma Bin. Shang Qingyu had obviously heard of Ma Bin's name. His eyes narrowed slightly. His expression, which had been calm since he came to the Wanxiang Sea, finally showed some seriousness at this moment. Even though he could see that Ma Bin was injured and in poor condition, he still didn't dare to underestimate him. This slight change made the 6 illuminators of the 10,000 Elephant Sea feel bitter in their hearts. This was the Wanxiang Sea, but the people of Formless Palace didn't take them seriously at all. Instead, they showed fear of Ma Bin. This comparison made them feel very frustrated. What's the situation now? Ma Bin looked at Lu Yi and asked. Lu Yi said, Formless Palace invaded the Wanxiang Sea, killed people, set fires and looted resources. They were preparing to retreat. I told them to leave the things behind and get lost. They didn't listen, so they started fighting. You didn't lose out, right? Ma Bin looked at him with concern. Lu Yi shook his head. That's good. Ma Bin nodded slightly. The corners of Shang Qingyu and Yuan Sei's eyes twitched. They wanted to tell Ma Bin that not only did Lu Yi not suffer any losses, but he also killed 2 Rizhao from the Formless Palace. Now, he even forced the Formless Palace into an awkward situation. But no one dared to say it. Chapter 1997. The gate of the Formless Palace on the island of Versatility was already open. A large number of Formless Palace cultivators gathered around the gate, but no one dared to act rashly. More than 10 sunshine cultivators from the 3 parties gathered near the island of Versatility, facing each other from afar. Shang Qingyu's face was solemn, because he had realized one thing. The Formless Palace's invasion of the Wanxiang Sea was a complete failure. Their plan was good, and everything was going smoothly. However, no one expected Lu Yi to jump out just as they were about to retreat. Shang Qingyu looked at Lu Yi with a deep gaze, as if he was trying to remember his appearance. Then, he turned to Ma Bin and said, Brother Ma, you and Brother Lu are. Ma Bin said calmly, Lu Yi saved my life. What do you want? Shang Qingyu sighed slightly. If that's the case, then my Formless Palace will give face to fellow Taoist Ma. As he said this, he gently shouted, Leave everything behind. In this situation, the Formless Palace had no chance to turn the tables. Since they had to admit defeat, it was not shameful to admit defeat to the Azure Demon King Ma Bin. After all, he was famous. This was actually a way out for Shangqingyu. Everyone could tell, but no one pointed it out. As soon as he gave the order, the cultivators of the formless palace on the island of versatility unwillingly threw their storage rings filled with loot onto the ground. In the blink of an eye, there were thousands of storage rings in that area. Countless eyes were focused on that area. Shangqingyu looked at Lu Yi. "Are you satisfied with this?" Lu Yi looked at him. "You can only leave after you leave all your storage rings behind. If anyone dares to hide anything, don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, he stared at Shangqingyu's right hand. Shangqingyu was stunned. He subconsciously touched the storage ring on his right hand. "This is mine. You still have to leave it behind." Shangqingyu was so angry that he started laughing. This was truly the first time in history that the robbers had actually been robbed. Unfortunately, it was not good for him to fall out with them, because at this moment, not only were Lu Yi and Ma Bin looking at them, there were also the 6 great sons of the 10,000 Elephant Sea glaring at them covetously. He was sure that Yuan Se and the others couldn't wait for them to clash with Lu Yi and Ma Bin again. This way, they could join forces to pressure them. When the time came, the people from Formless Palace wouldn't be able to leave even if they wanted to. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Shangqingyu nodded slightly. "All right, as you wish." After saying this, he took off his storage ring and threw it toward the island of versatility. "And them." Lu Yi raised his Panshan blade and pointed at the Rizhao beside Shangqingyu. Each and every one of these faceless palaces Rizhao looked extremely humiliated. However, Shangqingyu had already handed over his storage ring. How could they resist? They had no choice but to take off their storage rings one by one and throw them away. Countless cultivators watched this scene from afar. For a moment, they felt a sense of relief, as if they had vented their frustrations. No matter which galaxy they came from or which domain they came from, since they had come to the Wanxiang Sea, they were here to make a living. They were a part of this place. The Wanxiang Palace had suddenly invaded and treated them like pigs and dogs, slaughtering them at will. The Wanxiang Galaxy was unable to protect them and could not resist at all. And it was under such desperate circumstances that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island came out and killed the Rizhao. He deterred everyone and ruthlessly dispelled the arrogance of the Formless Palace. Now, not only did he force these thieves to give up their loot, but they also couldn't keep their own storage rings. This was really satisfying. Compared to the various responses of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy to this invasion, Lu Ye's approach was undoubtedly more popular. "Can we go now?" Shangqingyu looked at Lu Yi and asked. Lu Yi remained silent with a cold expression. In another direction, Yuan Se stared at him without blinking. His eyes were secretly filled with anticipation. As soon as Lu Yi gave the order, he would immediately lead the other Rizhao to surround and kill the people of the Formless Palace. Now that they had returned the loot, they naturally had to kill them all. However, he felt that it was a pity that Lu Yi obviously had no intention of doing so. "Go back and tell your palace master that in the future, I have the final say in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If anyone dares to cause trouble again, I will kill them all." Scram. Shangqingyu blinked when he heard this, then looked at Yuan Se and the others beside him and said, "The Formless Palace will remember what you have done today, fellow Taoist." As he spoke, he floated backward and arrived in front of the door in a few steps. He shouted, "Let's go!" At this moment, the cultivators of the Formless Palace who had been waiting for a long time began to hurriedly retreat through the door. The first to leave was the Constellation Division, followed by Yu Yao. Shangqingyu brought up the rear with a few Rizhao. He had been wary of Lu Yi and Ma Bin, but until the few Rizhao disappeared through the door one after another, Lu Yi and Ma Bin did not move. "We've been tricked." This thought flashed through Shangqingyu's mind. He could finally confirm one thing. The treasure that could shoot out the golden light was not unlimited. Lu Yi could no longer activate the power of the treasure. Otherwise, he would not have let them leave so easily. With the strange power of the treasure, Lu Yi alone was enough to kill them all. However, there was no point in confirming this now. In other words, although he had his doubts before, he could only be completely sure after he left. This was an unsolvable situation. the door slowly disappeared. It was obvious that the formless palace had closed. This invasion war was declared over with the retreat of the formless palace cultivators. However, before the cultivators watching from afar could cheer in excitement, another change occurred. Attack! Following Yuan Sei's order, 4 of the 6 Rizhao from the 10,000 Elephant Sea attacked Ma Bin. Yuan Sei and Yen Gu from the Heaven Flame domain attacked Lu Yi. No one knew why this happened. Because just now, the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy had secretly joined forces with Lu Yi to put pressure on the Formless Palace. However, after the people from the Formless Palace left, they turned their backs on them in the blink of an eye. This change shocked everyone. They could only sigh at how quickly the Rizhao changed his mind and stance. I knew you wouldn't accept this. Lu Yi turned to look at Yuan Sei with a cold expression. However, he was not surprised by the actions of the 6 Rizhao from the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Instead, he looked as if he had expected this. Yuan Sei snorted. The 10,000 Elephant Sea is not for you to tell us what to do. An old fox like him who had lived for countless years was difficult to fathom. However, it was undeniable that such a veteran Rizhao was very perceptive. At the last moment of their retreat, Shang Qingyu confirmed that Lu Yi could no longer activate the golden light of the treasure. Yuan Sei naturally thought of this too. What they were afraid of was nothing more than the strange golden light. For a new Rizhao like Lu, without the treasure, who would take a second look? There was also another fact. Ma Bin was the enemy of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Back then, he had forced his way into the 10,000 Elephant Island and killed a Rizhao guard. There was also the death of Yuan Du, Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba. Yuan Sei had already confirmed their deaths on the way here. He originally thought that the 3 of them were most likely killed by the Formless Palace. However, after seeing Lu Ye's methods and hearing Mu Qing's report, Yuan Sei immediately concluded that Yuan Du and the others were killed by Lu Yi. Mu Qing had seen the scene of Yuan Du being injured and Gu Shi and Chen Xuanba being imprisoned by the Golden Light. At that time, the people from the Formless Palace had yet to invade. Both Lu Yi and Ma Bin had great enmity with the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Previously, when they were facing the invaders from the Formless Palace, Yuan Sei could stand on their side. However, when the Formless Palace left, this fragile alliance was instantly shattered. The real reason why Yuan Sei made up his mind was because of one sentence from Lu Yi. He had previously said that he would have the final say in the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future. This clearly meant that he wanted to get his hands on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Based on his prestige today and the fact that he had resolved the Formless Palace's invasion, if he really stood up, he would probably be more popular than the people of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. The 10,000 Elephant Sea had always belonged to the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Since when was it a place for an outsider to dictate? If Lu Yi was not dealt with today, the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy would completely lose control of the precious land that was the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It was true that the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy had not handled the invasion well. If Lu Yi had not come out in the end, all the looted goods from the Formless Palace would have been taken away. However, this did not mean that the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy should be grateful to Lu Yi. His actions and words had already touched on the fundamental interests of the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. This was what Yuan Sei could not tolerate. It was very likely that Lu Yi would no longer be able to activate the Golden Light. As for Ma Bin, according to Mo Wenli, he was already injured. Now that he had expended a great deal of effort to kill the great demon Venerable He Yun, his condition must be even worse. It could be said that there was no better opportunity than now to get rid of Lu Yi and Ma Bin. As long as they succeeded, the 10,000 Elephant Sea would return to the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy's control. The battle started again. In order to quickly take down Lu Yi, Yuan Sei had even taken action himself. Moreover, Yan Gai was on the side to provide support. Although they were certain that Lu Yi would no longer be able to activate the power of the treasure, they still had to be on guard. In case Lu Yi could still activate it, the 2 of them combined were enough to ensure that one of them could take down Lu Yi. However, what shocked Yuan Sei the most was that in the face of their attack, Lu Yi directly jumped into the 10,000 Elephant Sea after saying that sentence. Only one sentence was heard, Just you wait. With a splash, water splashed everywhere. Yuan Sei was dumbfounded. Yen Gai was also dumbfounded. They had anticipated many possible scenarios, including Lu Yi activating the golden light again. However, they did not expect that Lu Yi would actually jump into the 10,000 Elephant Sea on his own accord. Was the 10,000 Elephant Sea so easy to jump into? Yuan Du's sunshine had only been in the sea for a moment, but he had already been eroded to a tragic state. His spiritual power was extremely turbid. Lu Yi, a newly advanced sunshine cultivator, would only be in a worse state than Yuan Du if he jumped in. Yuan Sei was delighted at first. He was delighted that his judgment was right. Lu Yi really could no longer activate the golden light. Otherwise, he would not have jumped into the sea. Then, his expression became uncertain. No one would actively seek death, especially a sunshine cultivator. If he could not win, he would at least try. If he really could not win, it would not be too late to jump into the sea. Moreover, Lu Yi had left behind such words. Obviously, he would not give up so easily. Could he solve the problem of the 10,000 Elephant Sea's erosion? Otherwise, why would he jump into the sea to escape? End of chapter. Chapter 1998. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lu Yi escaped by jumping into the sea. Yuan Sei was shocked and could only turn to look at Ma Bin. However, what he saw made him even more depressed. Ma Bin was facing the siege of the four sunshine of the Wanxiang Sea, but he escaped without looking back. His condition was extremely bad. How could he fight under such circumstances? Moreover, he had received Lu Ye's secret message. Hence, when Yuan Sei and the others made their move, he immediately followed Lu Ye's instructions and escaped far away. Chase. Yuan Sei was furious as he chased after Ma Bin. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If he missed it today, it would be difficult to kill Ma Bin in the future. He could not chase after Lu Yi from the three-world island who jumped into the sea to escape. Ma Bin did not have the ability and courage to do so. In an instant, the six sunshines split into two groups and chased after Ma Bin. On the reef island, Tao Wu, who had witnessed the conflict from beginning to end, was worried. He looked at Hua Ci beside him and asked, "Friend, are you not worried?" He did not know the relationship between Lu Yi and Hua Ci. He had never seen Hua Ci before. However, since Lu Yi came with Hua Ci and looked very close, it was obvious that their relationship was not ordinary. However, now that Lu Yi was forced to jump into the sea, Hua Ci did not look worried at all. Tao Wu could not understand. This was the Wanxiang Sea. Even if Lu Yi had reached the sunshine level, how could he end up well after falling into the sea? Hua Ci only smiled and shook her head. She had a mysterious look on her face. Tao Wu scratched his head. His face was full of worry. Lu Yi had saved his life. If it was within his power, he would not sit by and do nothing. Just like when the three-world island's development was hindered, he stood his ground and opened a branch of the Rainbow Chamber of Commerce in the three-world island. However, today's battle was beyond his control. Hence, although he was worried and anxious, there was nothing he could do. He only knew one thing. The Wanxiang Sea would be in complete chaos from today onwards. The sunshine of the Wanxiang Galaxy had lost a lot. The major spiritual islands had also lost a lot. The factions behind these spiritual islands would not let this matter rest. When the time came, they would come to the Wanxiang Sea to demand an explanation. The Wanxiang Galaxy, which had just experienced a great change, would not be able to withstand such pressure. When the time came, the vast Wanxiang Sea would probably be divided into different factions. Even the five-color realm, where he came from, would have to send Rizhao to take care of it. Over the years, the myriad phenomenon galaxy had set various rules. Although it was sometimes inconvenient, it was precisely because of these rules that this place was able to become the center of many galaxies and flourish for countless years. If these rules were to disappear one day, then it would probably be impossible for small powers to survive in the entire myriad ocean. At that time, it would definitely be divided up by those top powers. This was definitely not a long-term solution. Just as Bai and was thinking about this, he suddenly raised his head and looked into the distance. At a glance, he saw a stream of light rapidly approaching. "Why are you back again?" Bai and was astonished. There were many people who were just as confused as him, because Ma Bin, who had escaped earlier, had flown back, followed by the 6 sons of the Vientiane galaxy. They were filled with killing intent. Even with Bai An's eyesight, he could tell that something was wrong with Ma Bin's condition because his Rizhao's aura was fluctuating. This was obviously a sign of serious injury. It was probably because of his poor condition that Ma Bin was unable to escape from the pursuit of the 6 Rikashi. If this situation continued, Ma Bin would definitely die. Soon, the Rikashi's figures swept past the island of versatility. Like reincarnation, Ma Bin continued to escape. Yuan Sei led the other Rikashi in hot pursuit, like maggots in a corpse. Splash! A sound was heard, and a figure leaped out from under the myriad phenomenon sea. He shouted, "Yuan Sei, die!" "Brother Lu!" Bai, and immediately discovered Lu Ye's figure and immediately widened his eyes. He wanted to see if Lu Yi had been eroded by the myriad phenomenon sea's water. However, under his observation, Lu Yi did not show any signs of being eroded. Instead, his magic power was surging like waves, and he seemed to be in a better state than before. At the same time as Lu Ye's shout, a familiar golden light shot out. Yuan Sei, who was chasing after Ma Bin, instinctively turned his head when he heard Lu Ye's shout. His expression changed drastically. "Oh no!" He reacted quickly and immediately summoned a magic treasure to protect himself. At the same time, his body moved left and right unsteadily. However, he soon experienced what the Rikashi felt when they were targeted by Lu Yi. When the golden light flashed and attacked, no matter how he dodged, he felt that it was impossible to avoid it. When the golden light covered his body, Yuan Sei's magic powers suddenly froze. Even the magic treasure protecting his body was covered by the golden light and lost its spirituality. Lu Yi raised his saber and charged at him aggressively. Mu Qing and the others' expressions changed drastically. On the side, Yen Gu reached out and grabbed Yuan Sei, who was imprisoned by the golden light, and saved him from the fate of falling into the myriad phenomenon sea. How could he continue chasing after Ma Bin? Seeing Lu Ye's menacing aura again, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling apprehensive and immediately shouted, "Run!" Yuan Sei's guess was wrong. Lu Yi could still summon the power of the golden light. However, he did not use it just now. Instead, it caught them off guard. The reason why Ma Bin led them back in circles was obviously because he had discussed it with Lu Yi beforehand. There were only 6 Rikashi left in the myriad phenomenon galaxy. Now that Yuan Sei, who was the strongest, was hit, if Lu Yi summoned the golden light a few more times, wouldn't they be wiped out? The others began to panic as well. Following Yen Gu's words, they all ran off in different directions, quickly disappearing from sight. Lu Yi chased for a while with his blade and could only watch as Yen Gu and Yuan Sei disappeared into the distance. He had no choice. He had just reached the Rikashi level and had not stabilized his cultivation. In terms of speed, he was not as fast as Yen Gu. Of course, if he used Blood Escape, he might have a chance to catch up. However, in that short period of time, the Pai Xiu swallowed the water of the myriad phenomenon sea was barely enough to summon the power of one golden light. It was impossible to summon a second one, so it was meaningless even if he caught up. His aggressive pursuit was more for show. After a while, Lu Yi stopped and slowly put away his Pan Shan blade. The fierce battle between the Rikashi level and the Rikashi level had finally come to an end. The changes in the middle were too much for the cultivators to take in. In just one day, more than 20 Rikashi-level cultivators had appeared on the myriad phenomenon sea. This was something that had not happened for many years. However, at this moment, only Lu Yi was still standing. Countless eyes were looking from all directions. The cultivators with some foresight understood one thing clearly. From today onwards, the myriad phenomenon sea had changed. The people of the formless palace were forced to retreat. The Rikashi-level cultivators of the myriad phenomenon galaxy fled pathetically. The vast myriad phenomenon sea would probably belong to the Lu family in the future. This was undoubtedly a historical moment. Although they did not participate in it personally, being able to witness it with their own eyes still made many cultivators excited. Messages were sent by different cultivators and quickly spread in all directions. On the Myriad Phenomenon Island, Lu Yi slowly landed and looked at the small mountain of storage rings on the ground. These were left behind by the Formless Palace cultivators before they left. Until now, no one dared to touch them. Ma Bin had returned. He landed not far from Lu Yi and nodded slightly at him. He seemed to be fine, but Lu Yi smelled a trace of blood on him. This was caused by Ma Bin's inability to suppress his qi and blood. Obviously, he was not in good condition. 2 more figures flew over. They were Luan Xiaoa and Yen Miao, who had been guarding the Four-Corner Island. Lu Yi had sent them a message earlier, asking them to come over. However, even if they were in the Rikashi level, it would still take some time for them to arrive. The 4 Rikashi of the 3-world island were gathered in one place. Lu Yi looked left and right. He could clearly feel that at this moment, countless gazes were focused on him from all directions. To him, today's battle was over. However, to the Myriad Phenomenon Sea and the cultivators here, some things were just the beginning. He had a plan in mind. He leaped into the air with a myriad of emotions. Back then, when he was chased by Old Tang, he accidentally fell into the Myriad Phenomenon Sea through the insect path. When he first saw the magnificence and prosperity of this place, both he and Old Tang were like country bumpkins who had never seen the world. In a foreign land, the 2 of them put aside their grudges and formed a team. During this period, he struggled to survive while Old Tang wandered about. Later, he obtained the Minor Constellation Palace and built Matchless Island. Only then did he gain a foothold on the Myriad Phenomenon Sea. With the guidance of the Reincarnation Tree, he returned to the Jade Snail Galaxy without hesitation. He brought the cultivators of his homeland to the Myriad Phenomenon Sea to pursue their dreams. In the end, he came full of expectations, only to find that Matchless Island had changed owners. Even Old Tang, who had stayed behind, was almost killed. He was not as strong as others, so he could only endure. Instead, he built the 3-world island, fought the Baiwe, and defeated Zixien. He established his reputation as the #1 cultivator under the Rikashi. With a long saber, he carved out a bloody path. The cultivators of the 3-world island finally had a stable cultivation environment. If there were no accidents, Lu Yi would have to leave the 3-world island after ascending to the Rikashi level. At that time, without the protection of his reputation, the future of the 3-world island would be uncertain. However, no one expected Yuan Du to do that. The person who set the rules did not follow them. It was the biggest joke in the world. Even at that time, Lu Yi did not think much of it. He wanted to take the opportunity to retreat and move the 3-world island to the bottom of the sea. In the end, Ma Bin, who could not bear to see him suffer, appeared out of nowhere. Then it was Yaya and then Hua Ci. Unwilling to be left out, unwilling to watch helplessly, he broke the taboo, activated the power of the talent tree, polished his spiritual source, and quickly ascended to the Rikashi level to participate in the battle. Step by step, to reach this level, it was fate, helplessness, and forced by the situation. However, at this moment, Lu Yi realized that the result was not bad. Since they could break the rules set by others, then the rules of the Myriad Phenomenon Sea should be set by themselves. Anyone who dared to break the rules would be killed without mercy. From today onwards, all spiritual islands in the Myriad Phenomenon Sea, big and small, will be under the jurisdiction of the 3-world island. If anyone is unwilling, leave the Myriad Phenomenon Sea within 2 months. Chapter 1999. Lu Ye's voice was not loud, but under the influence of the sunshine's magical power, it spread out in layers until it covered the entire Wanxiang Sea. In a short while, all the cultivators in the Wanxiang Sea heard his announcement. The 6 sunshine who had fled to the edge of the Wanxiang Sea turned around abruptly. How dare he? Mo Wenli gritted his teeth and growled. He was clearly trying to take over the Wanxiang Sea. The Wanxiang Sea had always belonged to the local galaxy. There had been a few crises in the past, but no one had ever been able to overturn the local galaxy's dominance. Until today, 3 of the original 5 Sunshine Guards had died. Although another 4 had come to help, they could not defend themselves against the strange golden light. Now, they were fleeing in panic and had lost all face. In the face of the Formless Palace's power, they were powerless. However, Lu Yi forced the Formless Palace to leave behind all the looted goods. Many cultivators saw such a stark contrast. Now, Lu Yi was obviously more capable of protecting the Wanxiang Sea's interests than they were. He was better at protecting the Wanxiang Sea's cultivators in the face of a powerful foreign invasion. If Lu Yi really wanted to take over the Wanxiang Sea and take over the Wanxiang Sea, the local galaxy could not do anything. Summon Juyen back. Yuan Sei transmitted his voice as his divine consciousness surged. He looked defeated. There was nothing they could do in the current situation. They could only summon Juyen back and let her handle it. They heard that Juyen had a good relationship with the Three-World Island. Perhaps if Juyen stepped in, there was still room for negotiation. Otherwise, if someone else really took over the Wanxiang Sea, the local galaxy would become the laughingstock of the entire cultivation world. On the Wanxiang Island, Lu Ye's voice sounded again. The Formless Palace's looted goods will be kept by the island for now. The major spiritual islands will be responsible for the losses. You can come to the island to collect the looted goods after 10 days. As soon as he said this, Ming Dang, who was on the distant reef island, rolled his eyes and shouted, "Island Master Lu, are you serious? Are you really willing to return the looted goods of the major spiritual islands?" He had an excited expression on his face, as if he had suffered a huge loss in the previous incident, but in fact, he had foresight. Long before the Formless Palace attacked the 5-colored island, he had left with a large number of resources and cultivators. Although the 5-colored island had suffered losses, the losses were not great. Now that he had spoken, he was undoubtedly echoing Lu Ye's words, because he had vaguely seen through Lu Ye's intentions. With a top-tier spiritual island master like him speaking in agreement, it would undoubtedly make it easier for Lu Yi to carry out his plan. He was not the only one. Countless cultivators in the entire 10,000 Elephant Sea were overjoyed. After this incident, countless people had died. All the top-grade spiritual islands and even some of the high-grade spiritual islands had suffered a calamity. The dead couldn't be resurrected, so they didn't think much about the looted goods, even though Lu Yi had already forced the people of Formless Palace to leave everything behind. No one had expected that Lu Yi would be willing to return it. This was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise. Smart people could tell that this was Lu Ye's move to win over the people. If he wanted to control the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he would need the support of the various forces behind the major spiritual islands. By paying a price and gaining the support of the various forces, it would undoubtedly be easier for him to control the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Compared to the benefits he could obtain in the future, what was the price he paid now? Moreover, he had obtained these goods by robbing the people of Formless Palace in the first place. But even so, the fact that Lu Yi could do such a thing still gave people a good impression of him. Many people secretly praised Lu Yi in their hearts. If it were someone else who didn't have such a big plan and stood in Lu Ye's position, they would have already taken all the resources for themselves. Of course. Lu Yi nodded slightly and said, "Also, after this incident, the forces behind the various spiritual islands may send Rizhao to investigate the situation. Please tell Rizhao to report to the Three-World Island immediately when he comes to the 10,000 Elephant Sea and do not cause any trouble. The rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea are the same as before. If anyone dares to break the rules, the Three-World Island will not let them off easily." To be honest, the rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea were quite useful. Under the restrictions of the various rules, it could ensure that even if a conflict broke out in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the scale of the conflict would not be too big. This made it easier to govern. Admittedly, some of the rules were unreasonable. However, these rules had been in place for tens of thousands of years and were deeply rooted. Lu Yi did not intend to change them too much. Now that the Three-World Island had just taken over the 10,000 Elephant Sea, There were some things that could not be rushed. Therefore, it was best to stick to the previous rules. Thousands of storage rings were kept by Lu Yi into the little flower world. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he called out and a few figures followed closely behind him. They flew towards the three-world island. After he left, more news was passed on through the hands of cultivators. Today's battle had turned the 10,000 Elephant Sea upside down. This treasured land that had been ruled by the local galaxy for countless years had completely changed owners. Such a major event was rare in the entire starry sky. The forces behind the top spiritual islands naturally needed to know first-hand information. Today's battle was destined to be recorded in the annals of history. After all, as many as 7 Rizhao had died. In this battle, the local galaxy suffered great losses and the formless palace was covered in dirt. On the other hand, the first island master of the three-world island, who had just been promoted to Rizhao, had reaped great rewards. The news of Lu Yi controlling the golden light-type treasure and having a strong sealing power against Rikishi also spread quickly. A newly promoted Rikishi was indeed nothing, but such a strange and difficult to guard against Rikishi was not something that could be taken lightly. The key was that such an attribute treasure had been activated several times in the short span of one day. It was this attribute treasure that gave the newly promoted Rizhao the confidence to declare his rule over the 10,000 Elephant Sea. On the three-world island, Lu Yi and the others returned. Ma Bin immediately entered the spirit jade mine to heal his injuries. This battle had not only made his recovery over the past year go up in smoke, but also worsened his injuries. Before this, he had forcefully suppressed it in front of outsiders. Now that he had returned to the three-world island, he could no longer suppress it. Lu Yi personally sent him into the spirit jade mine. Seeing that he had entered a state of recovery, he was relieved. When he came out, Yuan Xiao and Yen Miao were waiting outside. Lu Yi glanced at Yen Miao and ordered, "First Elder, please go back and bring back the blue sea snail. Also, inform the island's cultivators of the changes here." When the three-world island's cultivators had left, the blue sea snail was taken to the mermaid territory by second senior sister. If they wanted to return now, they had to bring the blue sea snail back and blow it on the island to open the door to the sea. This was not difficult for Yen Miao, who had already been promoted to Rizhao. It should only take a few days. Okay. Yen Miao immediately nodded in agreement. He flashed out of the three-world island and disappeared into the sea. "Junior brother, what do I need to do?" Yuan Xiao asked. Lu Yi looked at her and then at Hua Ci, who was standing not far away. He said, "There's nothing to do for now. Senior sister, please take care of Hua Ci." Although he had made a name for himself in today's battle, he did not rely on his own abilities. He relied more on the Pishio's golden light. His own abilities were not enough to conquer or even rule the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Although it was unlikely that anyone would come to the three-world island to cause trouble, there were still some things that he had to take precautions against. Hua Ci was the Pishio's master. Hence, nothing must happen to her. With Yuan Xiao by his side to protect him, he felt more at ease. He actually wanted to have a good chat with Hua Ci. Based on their interaction this time, something was wrong with Hua Ci. She seemed to have lost her memory. But now was not the time. He still had some problems to solve. Lu Yi sat down cross-legged in front of the entrance of the spirit jade mine. The three-world island's protective array had not been rebuilt yet. The entire spirit island was in a defenseless state. It was the easiest time for outsiders to invade. If he stayed here, he could better protect Ma Bin, who was recuperating. He immersed his mind and felt the changes in his body. After reaching the Sunshine Realm, his spiritual power, physique, and even soul power had increased tremendously. This was an overall transformation brought about by a major realm increase. As his realm gradually stabilized, this growth would continue for a while. It was just that it would not be as strong as before. Now that he had already condensed the flower of the body and the flower of Qi, the next step was to condense the flower of the god when he reached the limit of the Sunshine Realm. This should not be too difficult for him. The rainbow god Lotus had been nourishing his soul. His soul power was constantly growing. Furthermore, he could enter the ancestral land of the Soul clan at any time. Cultivating soul power in that place would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Looking at the entire cultivation of the three flower, only the flower of the Qi required energy and time. After passing this hurdle, the rest of the journey would be smooth. Lu Yi was looking forward to the changes that would happen to him after he condensed the flower of the god. He also wanted to know what the secret of the three flowers would entail. However, that would be a long time in the future. Right now, he had an urgent problem that needed to be solved. As he immersed his mind, he could clearly see a black fruit hanging on a branch on the talent tree. He could feel that this fruit was filled with a cold and ominous aura. If he listened carefully, he seemed to be able to hear a wailing sound coming from inside. In a calm state, this black fruit did not seem to have any effect on him. However, Lu Yi knew that once his emotions fluctuated, this fruit would cause a huge distortion in his heart. Today, he had fought with others several times. His heart was filled with ruthlessness. When he captured Rizhao from the formless palace, he even had the urge to devour them. It was the greed and addiction that came with having tasted the marrow. Fortunately, he did not really do that. However, he could persevere this time. What about the next time? And the time after that? Lu Yi did not want to be the second Zhao Nian, so he had to find a way to get rid of this black fruit. There was something to take care of. End of chapter. Chapter 2000. Lu Yi knew that the formation of the black fruit was inseparable from the foundation of those cultivators he had devoured. Whether it was Su Yuqing or Ma Bin, they had both told him that the Tao tree could burn all things in the world, except for the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Therefore, he guessed that this black fruit should be the condensation of the 7 emotions and 6 desires of those cultivators he had devoured. It was precisely because of this that it would affect his own temperament. How should he deal with this thing? Lu Yi wanted to pick it, but this was not a real fruit and could not be touched at all. Naturally, he could not pick it. He then turned to the power of the talent tree, wanting to burn this fruit, but no matter how he urged it, the fruit was safe and sound, showing no signs of being burned. Over the next few days, Lu Yi had lost count of the number of attempts he made, but he was unable to do anything to the black fruit. In fact, because of his repeated failures, his mood became even more irritable. The black fruit began to emit a black mist. As the mist spread, Lu Ye's aura underwent a huge change, becoming gloomier, and there was a bloodthirsty impulse in the depths of his heart. Sensing that something was wrong, he quickly calmed his mind and slowly calmed the distracting thoughts in his heart. After a full 2 hours, Lu Yi slowly recovered. After thinking for a moment, he raised his hand and pointed forward. A section of the root of the talent tree extended from his fingertip. With this as the foundation, a large amount of aura gathered, and the power of magic power and divine soul also surged endlessly. In the blink of an eye, a doppelganger appeared in front of him. It was the talent tree doppelganger. Lu Yi had not constructed a talent tree doppelganger for a long time, because relatively speaking, the precious blood doppelganger was more convenient and faster, and there were more of them. The talent tree doppelganger required a section of the root of the talent tree as the foundation to be constructed. If there was an accident, the split talent tree doppelganger would probably be lost. Unlike the precious blood doppelganger, even if it was destroyed, it would not have much impact on him. This time, constructing the talent tree doppelganger was a helpless attempt, and it was also a flash of inspiration in his mind. The moment the talent tree doppelganger was formed, Lu Yi could not help but raise his eyebrows, and a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face. This was because he found that the black fruit hanging on the top of the talent tree doppelganger was obviously smaller. Was it really possible? Lu Yi was overjoyed. The reason he attempted to construct a talent tree avatar was because in the process of constructing this avatar, he needed to split off a portion of his foundation. Not only did this include the roots of the talent tree, but it also included his blood essence, magic power, and soul force. If that was the case, would the black fruit also be split? It was because of this that he decided to give it a try. The results proved that the black fruit had indeed been split. In that case, he only needed to destroy the talent tree clone, which was equivalent to destroying a part of the black fruit. Then he could construct a new talent tree avatar and continue to destroy it. By dividing the black fruit again and again, he would be able to completely destroy it sooner or later. Lu Yi thought so, but he didn't dare to make a move. A long time ago, he had a feeling that if the talent tree was lost or destroyed, it would not be a good thing for him. Furthermore, if he were to use this method to deal with the black fruit, it would not be possible with just one talent tree clone. He would need a lot. He didn't even know if he would be able to condense another talent tree clone after losing it. The talent tree was extremely important to him, and he couldn't afford to be careless. Therefore, although he had discovered such a method, Lu Yi couldn't really do it. On second thought, didn't Zhao Nian discover this method back then? He should have discovered it, but he still couldn't solve his problem. This meant that this method was feasible, but not advisable. In the end, Lu Yi didn't destroy his talent tree clone because he didn't dare to take the risk. However, just as he withdrew his talent tree clone, he suddenly remembered something. Not only did he have the talent tree clone, but he also had the treasure blood clone. The talent tree clone couldn't be destroyed at will, but the treasure blood clone didn't have this concern. If one was destroyed, he would still have a second one. Even if they were all destroyed, he could still condense another one. If the treasure blood clone could split the black fruit, thinking of this, Lu Ye's mind suddenly became active. He immediately activated the treasure blood clone and condensed it. However, after the treasure blood clone appeared, the black fruit didn't change. This made him a little disappointed, but he didn't give up. Instead, he made more attempts. This was because he had found a way to solve his current problem. He had a premonition that this might be the only right direction for him. Moreover, this was an advantage he had that Zhao Nian didn't have. As he kept trying, he didn't notice the passage of time until Wan Xiao called out softly, "Junior brother." Lu Yi opened his eyes and looked at her in a daze. Wan Xiao said, "The cultivators of this island have all returned. There's only 1 day left before the 10-day deadline you set. Tomorrow, the major spiritual islands should come to retrieve their lost resources. What do you think?" Lu Yi slowly came back to his senses and realized that there was a group of people standing behind Luan Xiao. The people of Yu Yao's level on this island were all there, as well as some old seniors he was familiar with in Jiuzhou. No one had expected that the situation on the Wanxiang Sea would change so drastically in just a few days. They had followed Lu Ye's instructions and moved to the Mermaid Clan's territory under the sea to take refuge. However, in just a few days, Yan Miao suddenly returned and told everyone that the three-world island was now in charge of the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi had advanced to Rizhao and killed many of them as if he were cutting vegetables. Not only did he stop the invasion of a powerful force called the Formless Palace, but he also defeated Rizhao from the local star system. When they heard the news from Yan Miao, no one dared to believe it. After all, it was too unbelievable. However, everyone knew that Yan Miao wouldn't joke about such things. Through the portal opened by the Azure Sea Snail, the cultivators of the three-world island returned. After confirming that the situation here was as Yan Miao had said, they felt extremely conflicted. Just 10 days ago, they had to flee in the face of danger. However, after returning, they somehow became the master of the Wanxiang Sea. This change was earth-shattering and caught everyone off guard. However, regardless of whether they were mentally prepared or not, being able to rule the Wanxiang Sea was a great thing for the cultivators of the Jade Conch boundary. This was a land of treasures. It was the reason why the Wanxiang Galaxy was so powerful today. If the Jade Conch boundary could control this place, it wouldn't take long for it to become as powerful as the Wanxiang Galaxy. Wan Xiao didn't want to disturb Lu Yi. Naturally, she could tell that Lu Yi was comprehending something recently. However, now that the 10-day deadline was approaching, she had no choice but to interrupt Lu Ye's comprehension. Lu Yi understood. He glanced at everyone and nodded slightly. Then, he took out the storage rings from the Little Flower Realm. "I'll have to trouble you to check the resources in here and prepare for the handover of resources to the major spiritual islands tomorrow." Tang Jun looked at him with interest. "Are you really willing to return so many good things to the spiritual islands? As far as I know, the resources in here include at least 10 top-grade spiritual islands and 18 superior-grade spiritual islands. This number is huge." If these things are given to the three-world island for our own use, it shouldn't be a problem to supply us for a few hundred years. Lu Yi said, I've already said it. It's too late to regret it now. Or do you have any good advice? Tang Jun chuckled, what advice? However, this way the three-world island will be more popular. It's not a loss to use these resources in exchange for better governance in the future. Without a doubt, he could tell what Lu Yi was planning. Although the resources were huge, the hearts of the people were harder to come by. If the three-world island really had the power to suppress the Wanxiang Sea, they wouldn't need to win over the hearts of the people. If anyone dared to oppose them, they could just suppress them forcefully. However, the three-world island didn't have such power now. The only thing that the three-world island could use now was the golden light of the Pai Xiu. Perhaps after Ma Bin recovered, he could become the mainstay of the three-world island. However, that wasn't the case now. Resources could be earned at any time in the future. Other things aside, the three-world island alone could earn them a lot of money every day. Originally, Lu Yi would have to leave the Wanxiang Sea after he became a Rizhao. The fate of the three-world island was hard to predict. However, there was no need to worry about that now. As long as Lu Yi could control the Wanxiang Sea, the three-world island would always be the three-world island. There was another point that Tang Jun didn't mention, but everyone was well aware of it. The largest portion of the looted resources was from the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. It took up almost half of the share. The other forces would probably send people to hand over the looted resources tomorrow. However, who would dare to come from the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce? Even if someone really came, the three-world island wouldn't care about it. This portion was destined to be taken by the three-world island. Apart from that, there was also the Purple Jade Island. The Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce would never send people to hand over the resources, so the Purple Jade Island definitely wouldn't. In fact, there was no one left in the Purple Jade Island. All the Purple Jade beast cultivators had fled. Obviously, they were afraid of being punished by Lu Yi. After all, the ones who attacked the three-world island this time were Yuan Du and He Yun. Both of them were dead. From now on, the Purple Jade beast cultivators would never have a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea. Therefore, even if they returned the resources, it would only be a small portion. Using this to win people's hearts was undoubtedly a good deal. Just this alone would directly show the benevolence and tolerance of the three-world island. It would reduce the rejection and backlash of the entire Wanxiang Sea. There was also another matter. The ownership of the Wanxiang Island and the Purple Jade Island, the two top spiritual islands. The Purple Jade beast cultivators had fled and the Wanxiang Rizhao had also left the Wanxiang Sea. These two top spiritual islands were destined to fall into the hands of the three-world island in the future. A single force controlling three top spiritual islands was something that had never happened in the history of the Wanxiang Sea. It could be said that after the previous battle, the three-world island had profited greatly, both in terms of reputation and actual benefits. The three-world island ate the meat while the other spiritual islands drank the soup. Moreover, it was the soup that originally belonged to them. Only by doing this could the Wanxiang Sea have a better future. End of chapter. Chapter 2001. For a special place like the Wanxiang Sea, it was not a good thing for a single power to dominate it. In the past, the Wanxiang Sea had the characteristic of being able to accommodate hundreds of people, which led to its prosperity and prosperity. The various top factions had noticed this, which was why they allowed their own galaxies to control the Wanxiang Sea. This was because every faction needed a place like this to exchange resources and information with other factions. Now that the Wanxiang Sea had changed owners, as long as the three-world island did not interfere with the interests of other factions and maintain the previous status quo, there would not be much resistance. The inventory of resources was not difficult, and Tang Jun was in charge of this. He took the thousands of storage rings away. Lu Yi then looked at Luan Xiao. Has any Rizhao arrived recently? Judging by the time, the Rizhao of the various factions should have arrived at the Wanxiang Ocean by now. With the path of insects, the information would not be so limited. According to the instructions he had left behind, If a Rizhao were to arrive, they would have to report to the three-world island first. However, in reality, he did not sense any Rizhao's aura arriving at the three-world island. Luan Xiao said, "I did sense many Rizhao's aura recently, but these people did not enter the Wanxiang Sea. They only stayed outside the Wanxiang Sea." Lu Ye's eyes flashed as if he had sensed something. It seemed like it would not be easy for the three-world island to control the Wanxiang Sea completely. This could be seen from the Rizhao's attitude. They had received news from their own factions, and now that they had arrived at the Wanxiang Galaxy, they did not enter the Wanxiang Sea and only stayed outside. They were obviously waiting to see what would happen. They wanted to see if the three-world island had the ability to control the vast Wanxiang Sea. They did not enter because they did not want to offend the three-world island. Once they entered the Wanxiang Sea, they would only have one choice, which was to acknowledge the three-world island's authority and report to the three-world island. Otherwise, they would be breaking the rules set by Lu Yi. So what were they waiting for? Were they waiting for the transfer of resources tomorrow? Lu Yi didn't think so. The total amount of resources that had been looted from the various spiritual islands was indeed huge. However, it wasn't a lot when it was distributed among the spiritual islands. Especially for Riguang, even if those resources were lost, it wouldn't be a big deal. There was no need for them to wait for such a small amount of resources. Lu Yi did not think too much about it. To the three-world island, controlling the 10,000 Elephant Sea was already a foregone conclusion. Anyone who tried to interfere was an enemy. As the saying went, counter soldiers with arms and water with an earth weir. He waved his hand, gesturing for Luan Xiao to return to her work. Then, he got up and walked into the spirit jade vein. Soon they arrived at the depths. A figure was sitting cross-legged there, quietly recuperating. It was Ma Bin. Compared to 10 days ago, his condition didn't seem much better. Only his aura was slightly more stable. Sensing Lu Ye's arrival, Ma Bin slowly opened his eyes. "What's the matter?" If there wasn't anything important, Lu Yi definitely wouldn't disturb him at this juncture. Looking at this junior of 9 provinces, Ma Bin had a complicated expression on his face. Previously, when his Dao foundation was damaged, he had already accepted his fate. With his reputation, it was impossible for him to find a spirit jade mine that could be used to heal his injuries. However, Lu Yi had given him a glimmer of hope, which was why he had come. He didn't expect to encounter such a situation. During the chaotic battle, he had chased He Yun for hundreds of millions of miles and killed him at the entrance of the insect path. However, it was also because of this that he missed the various changes that followed. When he returned, Lu Yi had somehow advanced to the sunshine level and was threatening the Formless Palace. After that, the Formless Palace had no choice but to retreat, and the 6 sunshine level cultivators of the 10,000 Elephant Sea had also fled. It was hard to imagine that a newly advanced sunshine-level cultivator could do such a thing. Even Chao Nian from 10,000 years ago paled in comparison to the current Lu Yi. At the very least, Chao Nian did not have such courage and means when he had just advanced to the sunshine level. "Senior, what's the background of the Formless Palace?" Lu Yi sat in front of Ma Bin and asked. He had come here mainly to ask about the Formless Palace. He had never heard of this force before, but with just one encounter, he could feel the strength of the other party. 11 sunshine-level cultivators had been dispatched at once, and this did not include the 2 who had chased after Yaya at the beginning. In this confrontation, they had formed a deadly feud. The enemy was in the dark, and he was in the light. Lu Yi of course had to find out more about the other party. "The Formless Palace," Ma Bin murmured. "It's indeed an unknown force. Or rather, it's not known by ordinary people." In the following period of time, with Ma Bin's explanation, Lu Yi gradually learned about the Formless Palace. There was a vast area in the starry sky, empty and deathly silent, and filled with all kinds of magnificent wonders. It was extremely dangerous, and even Sunshine could not guarantee his own safety if he went in there. This vast area, if really calculated, was about the size of hundreds of 10,000 elephant galaxies. This was the most barren place in the starry sky. There were no living creatures, and there was no decent boundary. It was even more barren than the remote Jade Conch galaxy. Although the Jade Conch galaxy was remote, it was still a galaxy with 3 large realms, and there were also other small realms. The area where the Formless Palace was located was really barren. In that part of the starry sky, even spiritual jades were rarely produced. However, in the center of such a place, there was only one top boundary, and it was the formless star. If there were no accidents, people would not be able to discover the formless star, because there were many wonders in the starry sky, and there were too many dangers. Until one day an expert walked out of the formless star. He had an evil temperament, and his methods were cruel. Moreover, he came from a place like the formless star, and his style of doing things was even more unscrupulous. Naturally, he provoked many enemies. However, he was strong enough, so although he had many enemies, he could always win every time he fought. As the number of enemies grew, his reputation grew. Gradually, a group of lawless people gathered around him, and they committed crimes everywhere. The predecessor of the Formless Palace was actually a group of galactic pirates, but they were a group of very strong galactic pirates. Ma Bin explained slowly. As their danger grew, they finally attracted the attention of those top forces, and a siege was inevitable. In that battle, the Formless Palace suffered heavy losses, and there were even rumors that the expert from the Formless Star was killed. Since then, this powerhouse had disappeared for a period of time. However, a few decades later, he appeared again, and his strength became stronger than before. The danger was even greater, and the reputation of the Formless Palace gradually spread. Subsequently, it continued to attract some villains or criminals who had committed crimes and had nowhere to go to seek refuge. After so many years of development, the Formless Palace now gathered many experts from various races. They hid in the Formless Star, and it was difficult for outsiders to come in contact with them. Even if there were big forces who wanted to join forces to besiege them, it was difficult to find the specific location of the Formless Star in that vast and barren land. Once, the Yellow Dragon domain took the lead in launching an encirclement operation. In the end, while they were still halfway there, they suffered heavy losses due to the explosion of an unstable starry sky wonder and had to return home. Since then, the Formless Palace became even more arrogant. After listening to Ma Bin's explanation, Lu Yi thought for a while and realized that the Formless Palace's sunshine was indeed complicated. He saw the Human Clan, Shadow Clan, Bone Clan, Demon Clan, Devil Clan. It was simply a place to hide evil. Because it is extremely difficult to even nurture spirit jades in that starry sky, the Formless Palace often goes out to plunder. This time, for some reason, they targeted the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi knew why they targeted the Wanxiang Sea. It was just a coincidence. Senior, what's the matter with the Formless Palace's ultra-long-distance transmission? If it's as you said, didn't those people directly teleport from the Formless Star to the Wanxiang Sea? Can such a long-distance transmission be achieved? This was the point that Lu Yi did not understand the most. Just the starry sky where the Formless Star was located was the size of hundreds of Wanxiang galaxies, and the Formless Star was far away from the Wanxiang Sea. What kind of method could directly connect the two distant places together? I don't know how they did it. I only know that there is a treasure in the Formless Palace. Every time they go out to plunder, they use the power of this treasure to teleport back and forth. A treasure of the treasure. Lu Ye's expression changed slightly. He suddenly remembered the filthy race he had encountered before. The filthy race controlled a treasure called the Heavenly Frost Mirror, which could release heavenly frost chi anywhere in the starry sky and then freeze and shatter space to form a worm path that could be used to pass through. The Formless Palace's method of transmission was obviously similar to the filthy race's method of opening the worm path, but the two methods were not the same. One was opening the worm path, while the other was transmission. Therefore, the treasure of the Formless Palace should not be the Heavenly Frost Mirror's treasure. He then thought of another question. Senior, do all treasures have their own treasures? So far, he had only come into contact with a few treasures, but whether it was the Vine of Good Fortune he saw in the Alpha Origin stage, the Constellation Palace, or the Azura Field, they all had their own treasures. Moreover, the power of the treasures to a large extent continued the power of the treasures themselves. Furthermore, his dice of fate was also a rare treasure. This was undoubtedly a very strange thing. Why did treasures have their own treasures? It was rumored that treasures were born together with the starry sky, and some were derived from the wonders of the starry sky. Then how were treasures born? Treasures were not living creatures, and there was no way to raise them. Basically, all treasures have their own treasures. Of course, there are exceptions. Ma Bin nodded. You were not strong enough before, so you didn't come into contact with many treasures, but now you are a sunshine expert. You may encounter all kinds of treasures in the future. You have to remember, there are many attributes of treasures, but the power displayed by murderous-type treasures cannot be resisted by ordinary sunshine experts. The power of a treasure can only be offset by other treasures. You can think of it this way: once the power of most treasures is fully activated, it is the work of a sunshine expert. Chapter 2002. When a treasure's power was activated, it was almost equivalent to an extreme sunshine realm expert. And the power of a treasure could only be offset by other treasures. Ma Bin's words reminded him of the battle between Yuan Sei and Shang Qingyue. One of them had summoned the fire gourd, while the other had summoned the Merak sword Qi. That level of battle was indeed not something ordinary people could compare to. Are there many treasures? Lu Yi asked. He alone had come into contact with many treasures. One could imagine how many treasures there were in the universe. Ma Bin thought for a moment and said, there are quite a lot of attribute treasures, but most of them are used as realm-suppressing artifacts. They won't be used easily. After all, these attribute treasures are related to the stability of a realm or even an entire galaxy. When they aren't used, they are the most powerful deterrent. Lu Yi understood. If the Formless Palace had not caused such a ruckus, Yuan Sei would not have brought the fire gourd along. Initially, he thought that the fire gourd would be able to resolve the crisis easily. Who knew that Shang Qingyue was prepared and had a Merak sword aura to protect him? Speaking of the Merak sword Qi, Lu Yi felt a sense of familiarity when he saw it, as if he had seen it somewhere before. It was only now that he suddenly remembered something. It was not long after he had ascended to the constellation realm and left the 9 states to explore the universe for the first time. He had met an expert called Feng Rumo in the universe. This guy was chased by a sword light and fled in panic. This person asked Lu Yi for something to eat and drink. Later, under his guidance, Lu Yi encountered the Spectre ship and met Haiteng. The Merak sword Qi that Shang Qingyue summoned gave Lu Yi a feeling that it was similar to the sword light that chased after Feng Rumo. At that time, he was not strong enough and could not see through Feng Rumo's strength. Now that he thought about it, Feng Rumo must be someone on the same level as Ma Bin. Such an expert was being chased by a sword light. Could it be the Merak sword? But after thinking about it carefully, it was not right. If it was a treasure, Feng Rumo would not be able to resist it. But if that golden light was the Merak sword Qi, it was too strong. Lu Yi could not figure it out. The only thing he was sure of was that the sword Qi that chased after Feng Rumo was related to the Merak sword. He wondered how the expert he had met by chance back then was doing now. Lu Yi then asked about the Saint of the Formless Palace. Unfortunately, although Ma Bin knew about the Formless Palace, he did not know much about it. Therefore, he did not know much about the Saint of the Formless Palace. Now that Yaya was on the run, Lu Yi didn't even know where to find her. But since she had chosen to unseal her strength and memories, she should have a way to deal with it. One day later, the 3-world island was bustling with activity. Many island masters of the spiritual islands gathered on the 3-world island. Under Tang Jun's leadership, the transfer of resources officially began. As for how much resources each spiritual island had lost and what they had lost, it was all calculated by themselves. Of course, there would be some people who would take the opportunity to exaggerate and take advantage of the situation. However, the 3-world island did not have the means to verify this. Furthermore, Tang Jun had already expected this and did not care too much about it. As long as it was not too excessive, he would turn a blind eye to it. This was because the harvest this time was simply too great. The entire Vientiane Trade Union and Violet Jade Island's resources had all been given to the three-world island. In a grateful atmosphere, the transfer of resources was carried out smoothly. The island masters of the spiritual islands were not stingy with their praises. Tang Jun responded with a smile. Although they were grateful that the three-world island had returned the looted resources, no matter which spiritual island it was, they merely expressed their gratitude. No one would easily acknowledge the three-world island's rule over the Vientiane Sea. At this time, in Lu Ye's attic, he was sitting opposite Tao Wu. Just 2 hours ago, Tao Wu came uninvited. He had a good relationship with Lu Yi. Even though Lu Yi had advanced to Rizhao, they did not feel unfamiliar with each other. Tao Wu came to look for him at this time. Naturally, it was not as simple as just visiting. The old man said that the major forces were willing to let the Vientiane galaxy rule over the Vientiane Sea mainly because the Vientiane Sea is located in this galaxy. The Vientiane galaxy has a natural advantage and its overall strength is not bad. Therefore, for so many years, everyone was willing to abide by the rules of the Vientiane Sea. If the major forces really wanted to get their hands on a treasure land like the Vientiane Sea, would the local galaxy be able to stop them? There was a high chance that they would not. However, if everyone wanted to get their hands on the Vientiane Sea, it would definitely be a chaotic battle in the end. No one would be able to gain an advantage. It was because of this mutual restraint that no one could stand out. The local galaxy had a natural advantage and their overall strength was not bad. It was natural for them to rule over the Vientiane Sea. The old man he mentioned was a veteran from the five-color domain, Rizhao Ri. After the incident at the Vientiane Sea, he rushed over immediately. However, like Rizhao Ri from the other galaxies, this elite from the five-color domain did not enter the Vientiane Sea. Instead, he stayed outside. Now that the three-world island wants to take over the Vientiane Sea, they have to show that they have enough strength to deter others from coveting it. Tao Wu said. Obviously, he did not say this, but conveyed the message of Rizhao Ri from the five-color domain. This was undoubtedly a kind of guidance. No matter what, the relationship between the three-world island and the five-color island was obvious. Was the previous battle not enough? Lu Yi asked. First, they had forced the Formless Palace to retreat. Then, they had defeated Rizhao Ri from the Vientiane galaxy. In that battle, 7 Rizhao Ri had died. This kind of deterrence was not enough. Tao Wu said helplessly, after all, that battle did not happen right under their noses. To them, everything is just hearsay. Also, to be honest, the current foundation of the three-world island is a little weak. The number of Rizhao Ri that the three-world island had shown to the outside world was only 4. Moreover, whether it was Lu Yi, Luan Xiaoa, or Yen Miao, they had all just become Rizhao Ri not long ago. Ma Bin had been famous for a long time, but it was no secret that he was heavily injured. At this stage, it was difficult for him to be a deterrent. Of course, the reputation of the golden light-type treasure had spread far and wide. Everyone knew that the three-world island had a strange golden light-type treasure that could seal off sunlight. But for those top realms, who didn't have a golden light-type treasure? Without a treasure, the three-world island was nothing in the eyes of the top forces. A heavily injured Ma Bin was not enough to hold up the fort. Lu Yi understood. So they want to see the foundation of the three-world island with their own eyes? Tao Wu nodded. That's the gist of it. If the three-world island could display a strong enough foundation, it would not be difficult for them to control the Wanxiang Sea. However, if they couldn't, then there would definitely be changes. What do they want to see? Lu Yi asked. I don't know. Tao Wu shrugged. But the old man said that we should be able to see the results soon. While the two were talking, Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked in a certain direction. So that's how it is. He had sensed that Rizhao Ri's aura had entered the Wanxiang Sea. However, judging from the other party's route, he was not coming to the three-world island. He was going somewhere else. This was a blatant provocation. At the same time, Tao Wu had obviously received the message. He quickly checked the sound talisman and looked up at Lu Yi. Shen Yun of the winged sky planet, Peak Rizhao Ri. He has the heavenly Luo umbrella and is invulnerable. The old man said that he and Gu Shi of the Tianyan field became sworn brothers when they were young. He is not here with good intentions. Lu Ye's interest was piqued. Heavenly Luo umbrella? The winged sky planet was also a top realm. Shen Yun came from the winged sky planet and was a peak Rizhao recultivator. With a treasure like the heavenly Luo umbrella, there was no place he could not go in this vast galaxy. Furthermore, the heavenly Luo umbrella sounded like it was used for defense. No wonder he dared to enter the Wanxiang Sea so openly. He obviously had something to rely on. He and the dead Gu Shi were sworn brothers when they were young. It was no secret that Gu Shi died at Lu Ye's hands. Although no one saw the process, Lu Ye could kill 2 Rizhao Ri from the formless palace. What was killing Gu Shi? Not only Gu Shi, but Yuan Du and Chen Xuanba's deaths were also related to him. Many Rizhao Ri knew this. I'm going out. Lu Ye stood up. Be careful. Tao Wu could not help but be a little worried. Although Lu Ye's performance in the previous battle was shocking, it was mostly because of the power of his attribute treasure. Now that God Cloud had come prepared, if Lu Ye's attribute treasure could not be used, with his newly ascended cultivation, he would definitely not be God Cloud's opponent. Once Lu Ye was defeated, it would be a joke for the three-world island to control the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Ye nodded and left the pavilion. He rushed into the sky, not bothering to hide his Rizhao Ri aura. At this moment, many pairs of eyes looked over from the periphery of the Wanxiang Sea. Spiritual wills flew back and forth. Obviously, they all knew that the time to decide the future of the Wanxiang Sea had come. Shen Yun was an old man with a malicious expression. Despite being a peak Rizhao recultivator, he still looked so old. It was obvious that he was too old. He had been famous for many years and had obtained the heavenly Luo umbrella by chance in his early years. Since then, no one in this world could threaten him. When the news of the Wanxiang Sea spread, he immediately realized that this was a good opportunity for the Winged Sky Star to control the Wanxiang Sea. As for the three-world island, he did not care about them at all. There were different levels of treasures. It was not that he had not seen the power of other treasures, but he had never seen a treasure that could break through the protection of the heavenly Luo umbrella. He could feel that many Rizhao recultivators were watching from the periphery of the Wanxiang Sea, but it did not affect him. The Wanxiang Sea was currently in a masterless state. Naturally, he had to make the first move. Those people who claimed to be cautious and wise had actually missed a good opportunity. What a joke! Just as he was heading towards the Winged Sky Island, he suddenly felt a spiritual will land on him. God Cloud snorted coldly and turned his head to look in the direction where the spiritual sense came from. He could vaguely see a figure rushing towards him from that direction. This made him very unhappy because the other party's brazen act of using spiritual sense to investigate was a provocation to him. Lu Yi of the Three-World Island? Shen Yun immediately determined the other party's identity. At this time, only the Three-World Island would come looking for him. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.